on a disk floating through space with a tiny sun.
Hey, I'm FTFE, welcome back to the channel that does the stupidity what I just did to Riley. Guys, thank you for watching my stream with Riley just now. That was my record viewers. I had over 1,200 of you watching, so wow, amazing. I've been joined by Spurs to go over, get his view on the debate that just happened. Spurs, welcome back to the channel. How you doing?
Hello, am I coming through? Okay.
Yeah, you sound good.
Hi. Good.
So, what was your thoughts on what just happened?
I think it was a good discussion, great discussion. Some great points being brought up, which I want to go over. I think as the debate went on, it just looked like neither of you were going to concede on either points. So I think that's what it was more about the academical world and who can outshine with knowledge and understanding is what I thought. And yeah, I think you did good. I think Anthony did well, did good. But again, I think it's just about who was going to concede. And there wasn't going to be any concessions tonight, it seemed.
No, right. So one of my issues with you guys flat earthers in general is that you do try to redefine things. And the way that you do it is by trying to say that this is the definition. Now, I think one of the points there that got Anthony quite annoyed was that I wouldn't concede that natural means not man-made. And I really want to get you guys to understand this, that in science, natural means not supernatural. So not God, not ghosts, not something unexplainable. That's, you know, and Riley always goes on about how...
You're out there, Craig. I think you're chopping up. Is that me or you? I'm not sure. Hold on. It might be me.
I seem to be good. I think other people are having issues today. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay.
Yeah, and Riley always says that words have very specific definitions, and in science more so. And that's why I don't like it when you guys try to use like dictionary definitions to redefine what science is.
I think what the problem is that you've got science in the heliocentric model. So I know you're going to say, well, this is reality, but that's where we would say, well, what you're calling science, in reality, what we can be is demonstrable, repeatable, and observable. It's not something that you guys do. You guys tend to make calculations, presuppose things, and then obviously you try to go and falsify those things. But the problem with that, you did speak about falsifying. Science did falsify. I was screaming at the screen there saying, Anthony, you know, just let's go through the falsification of what he's asking for. So how I understand, you've got an idea of a globe, you've presupposed, and then you've set out trying to disprove that we live on a globe, a spinning ball as it were. So I kind of feel that the Black Swan has done that, because if we're told that the radius is 3959 miles, okay, and for me that's a radius that was presupposed. So, okay, if we're going to presuppose that radius, we can go with that. But then when we actually go to measure that and try to prove that it's not 3959 there, Craig, we can go out there into the real world with real tools, with real measurements, and find that the horizon is not in a physical...
Spurs, you said measurements there. What measurements do you have that disprove the globe?
So, for example, you can figure out your height... and your location. Then you can figure out the distance, the size of the Earth, the radius of the Earth. Then you can work out, okay, so if I'm 6 foot, if I'm 1 foot, then objects should start to disappear from this point onwards. Or at least the Earth should start to fall away at this point, regardless of the atmospheric conditions. Physically, the Earth at 1.22 miles should start to fall away. So, obviously, you'd have physical obstructions at this point, Craig, you see. So that's how we can falsify.
But you said measurements. You said measurements. What measurements do you have that falsify the globe?
Okay, so if the Earth is 3959,
Yeah.
yes, then obviously every horizon should be no more than 1.225 times the observer foot in
Ignoring
height. Yes?
refraction, of course, but my
No, no, no,
question.
no. We're talking.
My question is,
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
measurements do you have? You specifically said we've gone out there with our tools and got measurements. What
All
measurement
right.
is
So
there? What
yeah,
actual
yeah. So there's a
measurement do you have?
All right, all right. I've got it. There's a fantastic way that I've devised. I came up with this. We've spoken about this with the guys as well, but there's a way of discerning or finding out or measuring if the Earth is flat or curving. Now, we all know that a piece of paper, like a piece of paper, is flat. Put it on the table, it's flat. And if we wanted to know how flat or how level that piece of paper was, we would take two plumb lines at either side and see if they were parallel. And we could say, yeah, they're absolutely parallel. This is completely flat. This is completely level. There is no elevation between the 2 points there, right? So we can extend this now to a pool, a bath, a lake, a sea, and we can have, so let's first go back a little bit. So with that piece of paper, we've got the parallel at either side. We can now call that measurement 0, okay? Because there is 0 elevation, or it's completely level, it's completely flat. So now we have a marker of what we determine as flat with 0. So anything more or less than 0, Craig, would show that there is curvature.
Yeah, but
Now we know.
what measurements is
for
there though
example,
to show that?
wow, we can show the Bedford Canal. We can show with any water level,
Except,
because level is level.
wait. You can't use the Bedford Canal
Yeah.
because when Wallace redid it, he proved there was curve.
No, but like I said, you can only prove if it's
That's not a measurement, Spurs. I'm asking you for an actual measurement. Your specific words were, we've gone out there with tools and made measurements. What measurement do you have? Like actual physical
0.
measurement?
0 is the measurement. That's the number that you come up with for flat. Now, anything more
Yeah,
than
but when
0.
have you measured that? When have you measured that 0?
Oh, I've measured water all the time. You just take two
When?
plumb lines. Oh, constantly throughout the. I mean, I haven't recorded. Would you like to see it? You want me to record it and show you?
I mean, I can show you plumb lines not being parallel.
Where? How?
Jesse Kwasowski, the Ven and Sarah Narrows Bridge.
What? So you're saying that he can show on a lake or something or a canal where the plumb lines are not parallel?
Uh-huh. I've got it here. One
Let's have a look.
sec. Let me get it up for you. That's what she said. Bunch. So, all right. This is Jesse Kwasowski, surveyor. Let me make sure you're getting a decent video for that so you can actually see it. And he uses theodolites to test your claim, right?
But what is this?
This is Jesse Kwasowski. Let me get down to the...
No. We want to see where we've got the two plumb lines where he can show...
I'm getting to that bit. If you just give me a sec to bring it up. Oh, come on. I hate the browser in this thing. It doesn't do it very well. Right, so here's one example, right? He's got two theodolites, both plumb either side of the lake. You can see...
a theodolite?
Yeah.
Why not an actual plumb line?
Because a theodolite is set up using a plumb line, and then you can actually cite to see if they are different, right?
No, but we just want to see the two plumb lines if they're level with one another.
No, you mean parallel, not level.
Parallel, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
parallel
that's what this is doing.
level.
The theodolites are both set up with plums, right? That's how they're set up. They're set up to be plumb, right?
I mean, I don't know how a theodolite works. You're saying they have plums on them. How? Show me where the plum is.
Well, that's literally how they set them up. They are set up to be
I
plumb
know what you
to the
said,
world.
Craig. I'm just saying, I don't know how they work. I've never
I hate the
seen a
browser,
theodolite with a plum inside. Can you show me where the plum is inside the theodolite?
Right, well, let me get the...
I'm not doubting you. I mean, you may be telling me the truth, right? But I've never used one in my entire life.
But this is how you test plumb lines. This is what you
I
use
believe
to test
you.
it.
I believe you at the moment, but I need to see a plum inside that theodolite to know that we're using a plum and not just a man-made device to manipulate the outcome.
A plum is a man-made device.
No, I know, but you can get natural plums, can't you? Right?
Yeah. It's on this page. You can go and look for it yourself. It actually shows you the whole bit for setting up.
Don't worry if you can't find it. But
basically,
you are under no pressure, Craig.
What this page shows is him actually testing the claim of plums being parallel, right? Now, work with me under the assumption here that the theodolites are parallel.
All right, we can go under the assumption, but don't think that I'm going with it because we're just assuming, right?
No.
It's hypothetical. Go ahead.
But what he's done is he's put it two sides of a lake, two different theodolites, different sides of a lake, and looked through the sites to see if they match up, and they didn't.
I'm sure they would because it's a man-made, rigged device. Of course it would.
Yeah, but it's what surveyors use to check if things are flat, right? I'll send you the page yourself to you.
All right. So did they get more than 0 or something like
that? Yes, they did. On every experiment,
I've got more for you, Craig.
Every measurement that Jesse did, every single one came up with a greater than 0 on the angles, right? Showing that the Earth is curved. This page has many different examples of him using surveying methods to demonstrate this fact.
No, I'm not doubting you, but I just mean we need to see the plumb. The plumb would tell you if they're both parallel. And if you get 0, any more than 0, less than 0, more than 0, then yes, the Earth is curving. But we don't have that at the moment, Craig. So let's move on to my next absolute 100% proof the Earth is flat.
Well, come on, let's not use the word
not
proof.
only that...
First, let's not use the word proof, because as I said to Anthony, the word proof exists in maths.
No, but... I mean, this is not evidence. This is more than evidence, right? This is
well,
solid.
No, you can only ever present evidence. That's kind of what science is. Nothing is. No,
but remember when we started, I said that your version of science is in the heliocentric model, not actually in reality, right?
Well, no, but I'm talking about real science. In real science, science doesn't prove things. You would evidence.
Call it real science. It's in the heliocentric model, and that's part of the paradigm, right? But if you were to actually test any of your science in the real world, you would find it a problem.
No, you wouldn't. Whenever you test it, it works.
Okay. So,
for instance, right, let's talk more about measurements, right? I can show you page after page of actual measurements of the radius of the Earth, showing that the world is curved, that surveyors have done time and time again. You can go to the page yourself at mctoon.net/r. mctoon has collected a whole bunch of measurements from across time and the world, and it's using proper surveying methods, and they always come up with the angles of the triangles are more than 180.
I'm not going to fall for all of this, Craig. Hold on. So look, I want to get to, because you did this kind of before, where you thought just explaining it away.
No, I'm saying that there's actual measurements that I can show you. That's what I'm saying.
No, because I've got more proof. What I'm about to explain next, or evidence, whatever you want to call it. But this absolutely demonstrates the Earth cannot be a globe, right?
Right.
Now, you may have seen this one around or heard it about. It's been spoken of before, but in order for me to believe what you're saying, we're going to have to agree that on what we're observing. So, for me, we get a direction with this evidence, an up or down. Now, you must have heard about meteorites, shooting stars.
Oh, yes.
Now, yeah, so we've never, ever seen a shooting star or a meteorite come up from the horizon. Now, in your model, there is no up or down. So that means the meteorites can shoot in any direction, right? They can go this way, that way, anywhere you like. But we've only ever see shooting stars or meteorites or comets or whatever you want to call them, fall from the sky down, one direction, from top to bottom.
Untrue.
Yeah. So if you can show
No, but wait, Spurs, you're saying that
clearly,
you
hold on, not one where it looks like where it, kind of could be. It needs to be clear that it's came up from the horizon. So not one from a mountain. Not interested in the mountain. What we're looking for is when you're at the beach, right, and you look at the horizon and you see stars, you see the sky, it's dark, and then you see stars coming down. You need to be able to show, to prove that there's a real horizon there and the curving around there, that stars can come up from the horizon, vertically, straight up into the sky. Now, Craig, you're going to have to concede tonight, my friend, because you are not going to prove this claim, because there is only one direction, which is up and down, down and up. No, two directions, down and up. And you say there is no direction. I know that came out wrong.
But Spurs,
but...
your claim is wrong, because I've seen
Oh, you got
meteorites.
proof?
I've
Let's
literally
see it
watched
now.
meteorites come from the horizon and go overhead and not come to
No.
the ground.
Let's see a meteorite come up from the horizon up into space, Craig, where there is no direction. Now, remember,
But
in our
they're
world,
not going up into space. When you see the meteorites go overhead, they're like disintegrating in
not
in
over
the
your head,
atmosphere.
Craig, not over your head. So you're looking at the horizon, right? So just like you see a star
The
or
Rumpus
a
is coming in, by
shooting...
the way, just so you know.
Who is, sorry?
The Rumpus.
Oh gosh, here we go. Well, it probably won't last long then, because he's going to start, just berating here, and it's not going to be a conversation. But the points are, you brought a friend in now. You brought back up because I've got you in a corner, Craig. Okay, you have to concede because vertically, not over your head, Craig. When a meteorite comes straight down, like you see it in front of you coming down towards the horizon, it doesn't go over your head. You just see it in front of you. So we need to see a meteorite go straight up, vertically, straight into space, into the
Why?
sky. Because they're supposed to go in any direction. Not just straight from down, not from the firmament, not from the dome, straight down to the ground, Craig.
I don't understand your claim though, because I can't show you a meteorite going directly up from the horizon. Therefore, the Earth is
Yeah.
flat. Spurs, that's a ridiculous claim.
That's proof.
It's not proof of anything.
That's absolute 100% proof, because if you're on a ball, Craig, we would see them fly in any which way, any way you
Have
want.
you ever seen a meteorite shower?
Yeah, so they should go in any direction, not straight from the firmament down to the ground.
But they don't.
Right? Craig, I've got you. But anyway, we can move on if you
They
want.
come up
But
as
I've
well.
got you that... Craig, you're going to have to concede, because I've got you with this one.
No,
Nobody will ever show
Spurs,
meteorites
you
going
really
straight up.
haven't. Have you ever seen a meteorite shower? They literally go in every direction.
But not up from the horizon. Yeah, in the sky, not up from the horizon, under
They do
the
come
earth.
up from the
we see.
horizon.
So, for
They
example,
come-
hold on, Rumpus. Hold on, Rumpus, please. So, Craig, just like we see the sun, you say, comes up from below our feet and up into the sky and over our head. I want to see a meteorite go up like the sun, below our feet, but straight up into the sky. Right? Not a big deal, Craig. You've got to concede if you can't find one. I've just proven that all your physics, all your maths,
No, you really haven't.
all of your
No,
astronomy, the
you're-
whole lot
You are
is
making a
false
large
and a lie,
assumption
Craig.
here. You're making a very large assumption.
No, Craig, come on. You've got to be a man about this, right?
You're just saying because you haven't seen them, Spurs, therefore they don't exist. That's your
No,
that's your
nobody has
whole
ever seen
reasoning.
this, Rumpus. Nobody has ever seen this, ever. Ever has anyone ever seen
It's
it?
going to come
and this
from.
proves...
I mean, if you wanted to, it's not behaved like the sun because
Anyway, we
they
can
move
on.
very, very
I
quickly.
don't wanna, but this is for something that people to think about, right? And if they can demonstrate... I mean, when I heard this, I was like, this is really, really strong proof. Not just evidence,
Yeah, but you're stupid.
absolute
You have no
solid.
idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, you would, here we
Yeah,
go.
you're an
You
idiot.
would say that. So
You
anyway,
are an
let's
idiot,
get
so
to
you have absolutely
Einstein.
correct.
All right, fine. We can move on to Einstein and Newtonian if you want.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Spurs, that's an extremely weak claim. I
No,
mean,
you haven't found one yet, Craig. You can't say that. We should see, like the sun, rise below our feet, like you tell us.
why should we? You're just making an assumption
Because
about
meteorites
how
should go
we
in
should
any-
see it.
They should go in any direction, not just up, not just from down to bottom.
That they don't
Why are they just coming down?
They're not just coming down. They literally travel all across the sky, from the horizon all around. I mean,
or from the firmament.
no, they're not. There's no such thing as the firmament. So
Yeah, that's the container. You know, we can't have gas pressure without a container. You know
Spurs,
all this.
we've been through this. I've told you what the container is, right? Let me break this down on a bit more of a basic level. All right. Imagine you've got a box that's not got a lid on it, right? And you take a big bucket of bouncy balls, right? And you pour those bouncy balls into that container that's got no lid, right? Now, each of those bouncy balls hitting each other is the equivalent of gas pressure, right? Now, there's going to be some of those balls that have more kinetic energy than others and are able to escape the top of the box. Now, there's going to be some that bounce around and settle at the bottom. Now, that's what our atmosphere is. It's the things that have enough kinetic energy to escape the downward acceleration, get outside of that box. That's what the container is. There is a downward acceleration. Nobody can deny there is a downward acceleration.
No. Yeah, I get. Look, this is understood. I mean, like I say, when Anthony was going over this, I was almost pulling my hair out. Okay, so the Einstein-Newtonian problem is, they're almost identical, Craig.
How can I send you a link, Craig? Can I send you a link easily?
Yeah, just
email it.
Yeah, just email it to me.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're identical almost. So yeah, you can probably make calculations for them that make the same. The time that things take to travel is almost the same from Newtonian to Einstein. But the only difference between the two, the only one fundamental difference between the two, is the mechanism here, Craig. So yeah, Newtonian was a.
Newton never had described the mechanism or tried to explain the mechanism.
No, he didn't have to describe the mechanism, but the fundamental differences between the two, right? Because they are almost identical in everything that they do, and obviously this is where Anthony was, because you were saying to Anthony, look, it's still the same. Everything still is in accordance, and I agree. If you go with this narrative, it is exactly the same. But just one thing has changed, which is in how I understand it, which is the mechanism, the process which causes these things to happen. So with Newton, we had a force which pulled objects, okay? And obviously Einstein looked at that and just changed what caused the apple to fall. So the apple still fell.
Just to stop you 1 sec, if you can look at the video I'm showing you, it's showing meteorites literally going every which way, including coming from the horizon and going above and stuff.
Going horizontal, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
No. These are all coming. Look, you need to show the proper physical horizon, right? And something like the sun, and something coming up straight
like
into
the sun. You mean
sky.
in daylight, where you can't see them? You mean?
You're seeing,
Craig,
you're literally seeing
into the
things come
sky,
up from the horizon.
vertical. Look, you don't need to look for this now. I know you're not going to find one. I know you're not going to find one, but.
I mean,
Just
I'm
consider
showing
this.
you it now.
No, you've got to show the horizon like the sun, right? Where the sun would come up. You don't have to show the sun, but where the sun would come up, and then a meteorite.
These things are coming from the horizon, Spurs.
That's the horizon in the distance, and you're seeing things come up above it.
And I've just sent some pictures to Craig, which also demonstrate some very close to the horizon. Just because if we can't produce one that's exactly on the horizon for you in our brief search, that's just ridiculous.
Look,
Do you think that's evidence?
Craig, you don't point towards the sky to see the horizon. Now, look, they're looking up at the trees. Come on, this is not fair. Let's see a
but
real
the horizon's still visible. The horizon's still visible. Just because, see, you're invalidating this. So you tell me you're invalidating this because we don't have the exact camera angle you want, even though it does include the horizon. Is that your argument?
We're not going to.
You idiot.
I'm absolutely destroying not you, Craig, but the argument, right? And Rumpus has to come in now.
We're giving you evidence on screen. You're talking bollocks. It's simple. We've invalidated your argument right now, and I've just sent Craig a load of images that also do it. We've invalidated your whole premise So if you want to accept you're an idiot and we'll carry on to this other argument you took about general relativity, that'd be fine, because we've invalidated you completely on your current position. We'll move on to another one. We'll eviscerate you on another subject if you like.
All right, so back to
Has he
relativity,
gone?
Spurs.
Yeah, back to relativity. So, you know, I find what Einstein did quite remarkable. If we're talking about the heliocentric model, the world, and the paradigm, what he's done is quite remarkable because, like I say, all he's done, because the force wasn't able to be found, you see, they would have experimented.
What force wasn't able to be found?
This pulling force.
What force wasn't able to be found?
This pulling force.
Right, you're denying the force of gravity.
No.
So you're denying the force of gravity.
Not in the heliocentric model world, I'm not. But obviously in the real
So
world,
are you denying the force of gravity or not? Can you please answer the question? Why are you dodging the question? Are you denying the force of gravity? Well, you simply can't you just say yes or no, or is there some ambiguity? I mean, okay, if you don't know, I mean, but is it not a simple question? Are you denying the force of gravity? Yes or no? Surely it's a very simple answer. I'm not trying to box you in here. I mean, if you want to say you don't know, then fine. But you either got yes, no, or don't know, or I don't want to answer because I'm going to embarrass myself. Which of those four options do you want to go for?
From the perspective of the heliocentric model, no. There is
right. So there is no force of gravity in our model. You're saying there's no force of gravity. Is that correct? Just make absolutely sure. Don't want to misquote you or anything. You're saying there is no force of gravity in our model or in reality, presumably as well. You're claiming
there's absolutely no force because
right,
of Einstein.
There's no force of gravity. Why are you dithering on this? Why are you being so tentative? And now why didn't you say at the start? Do you not understand the question? Let's be absolutely sure again. Do you deny the force of gravity in reality?
So, Craig, the idea is that there was.
So why are you dodging? So I know you love to dodge questions that are difficult for you, Spurs, but I don't think we're going to let you do that here. Why are you dodging my simple question?
Do you deny that gravity can be calculated as a force, Spurs? Yes or no?
No, not in the heliocentric model. No, not at all. Not how you
we're
understand
talking about reality.
it.
We're talking about reality here. In reality, can we detect a force of gravity? Yes or no?
No, you can time the time it takes for objects to move from one location.
No, we're not talking about time here. I'm just asking,
can
we detect the force of gravity or not?
He's asking,
why are you dodging this, Spurs? Can we detect the force of gravity in reality? Forget about models. In reality, can we detect the force of gravity? Yes or no, or I don't want to answer that question. These are the options you've got.
Gravity is not a force, no. Rumpus.
So therefore we wouldn't be able to detect it then, would we? Why are you dodging this question in such a devious little slippery way?
That's the thing. Here's the thing, Spurs. You're saying
let him answer, Craig.
Sorry. Go on, Spurs, and then
Can we detect the force of gravity in reality? Forget about you included this heliocentric model. No, we'll just deal with reality, Spurs. In your life, can we detect the force of gravity? Yes, no, or I don't want to answer. I'm too stupid to answer. Which one of these options do you want to go for?
Rumpus, you have harder hearing. You're getting old.
Well, you keep on giving me. I like to make sure I understand what the person's saying, and you've sort of given us sort of slightly ambiguous.
It's causing you to lose your mind.
I want to Nathan, Spurs. I want you to be straightforward. I know that's not natural to you, but I want you to be straightforward.
Nathan has been giving you a daily thrashing, Rumpus, and you feel like you need to take it out on somebody else.
Again. You see, you're deflecting again. You're deflecting again, aren't you? This is your little trick.
Rumpus,
can you see how he's deflecting everybody? Yeah, he will not answer the question. He says, I have answered it, but he won't quite say it. He will. And you sort of said it, but you haven't quite.
On Nathan's, Craig. He is rumpusing your show.
So you're deflecting again. Why don't you just answer a simple question?
He's rumpusing your own show. We have a name for this, Craig.
One sec, guys.
So you're deflecting again.
Both of you, one sec. Right. It is a simple question, though, Spurs. In reality, ignore heliocentric model or whatever. Is there a detectable force?
No, gravity is not a force.
Right. So why can't we detect it then? Why can we literally measure it?
Because there is the bending of space-time, Craig.
So we can measure it. Okay. So now you're saying we can measure it.
And what
Because
does that
that's-
bending of space-time
Hold
do?
on. Did you say he just contradicted himself? Now it says you can measure this, the force of gravity from the bending of space-time. So make up your mind, Spurs. Is there a force called gravity that we can measure in reality or not?
No, there's not a force,
Right.
Rumpus.
So don't then say there is. You just said then 10 seconds ago. You then said there was a force we could measure.
I did not, Rumpus.
Right.
You said in general relativity.
Yeah, I think his argument is the typical flat Earth one of Einstein came along and removed the force. Right now.
Yeah. Okay. So can I just pursue this, Craig?
No, all Einstein did. It's not that he removed the force. All he did was come up with the idea.
So it's still there then.
Why the apple?
So you're saying there is a force now? Is there a force or isn't there a force, Chemo? Please answer the question straightforwardly and honestly. I know it's difficult for you because you like to be devious. Please answer the question whether or not there is a force of gravity that we can measure.
Because if you're trying to build a heliocentric model here, Rumpus and Craig...
Forget models. Forget any model. I want to know, in reality, whether or not you think there is a gravitational force that we can measure. In reality. Forget models. We're not going to models here. We're going into reality.
And then you presuppose that the Earth is a globe.
I'm not asking you to presuppose. I'm asking you whether or not there is a force due to gravity that we can measure in reality. Why are you deflecting? I know it's what you naturally do, but just for once, give a straightforward answer. Is that because you know there is a force and you don't want to admit to it? Or is that the position here? You sort of realise there is a force there, but you don't want to say so? Is that correct?
So people ask questions. If you're on a board...
So how about you answering this question? You see, you've sort of answered it before, but you're going back on what you said. Is there a force of gravity we can measure or not? Why won't you answer in an honest way, Spurs? Why won't you be honest?
Right, Rumpus, let him respond.
Sorry.
So if you're trying to build a model...
Oh my God, you see, this is what this guy's like. He's an absolute wanker.
Right, Spurs, right, we're not talking about a model. We're literally just talking about in real life. Right, in everyday life. Is there a force that we can calculate, that we can measure?
Not calculate, measure.
There's no force, there is a rate.
Right.
There's no force.
Do you deny that F equals ma?
No, you've let him get off the hook. I want to just talk about the force first. He hasn't quite said, well, he's still being devious. So, Spurs, are you saying there is definitely no force due to gravity in reality? Is that your position?
Gravity is not a force, as I've said, Rumpus.
So therefore, there's no force we can measure due to it in reality then, isn't there?
There's no force.
You see, again, you're not answering the question. Is there a force due to gravity that we can measure, yes or no? Why can't you be honest, Spurs? Have a straightforward debate. I know you don't like doing this, but try and be honest for once. Be straightforward. I'll answer any questions you ask. And how about me answering this one? Is there a force of gravity that we can measure in reality?
There is no force. Gravity is not a force.
Right, okay, I think you've said that sort of about 3 times now, so I think we'll go with that. You've definitely said there is no force of gravity that we can measure in reality. I think hopefully everybody will agree with that.
Yeah.
So, Spurs, when you get on the scales in your bathroom, and I explained to you a few days ago that those things are force measuring devices, what is the force that it measures when you stand on them?
It's not measuring a force.
Right, okay, so we now got a problem again with you not thinking that scales in your bathroom measure force. Okay, let's deal with that. So if I pick up these scales, and I went through this with you before, I don't know whether you've forgotten it because you've got the memory of a goldfish. If you were to compress those scales in your hands and apply a force with your hands, it would register on the scales the force that you applied. Do you recognise their force measuring devices?
Demonstrate there is a force.
Well, that's what they do. So, but you're applying a force, and it registers what the force you're applying. And I could get a force. I could get something. So you're now okay. So now in the position where you're denying that scales are force measuring devices. Is that your position?
You're measuring.
You don't know what force is, do you? You don't know what force is, do you? And we established the other day you don't know what pressure is. We established you didn't know what acceleration was. We established you didn't know what F is equal to ma, what the A stood for. You didn't understand what momentum was, what force was. What else didn't you understand? Basically, every term that you ever used. So now you're denying that the scales in your bathroom measure force. That is your position, is it?
No, the scales.
So no, you just...
Wait, let him answer, Rumpus.
Sorry.
Sorry, Spurs,
What's
go
the
on.
question?
The question is, you denied that scales in your bathroom measuring force, and I demonstrated that if you picked up scales and pressed it between your hands, i.e. applying a force, they then register the force that you've applied. Therefore, they are force measuring devices. They don't know whether they're orientated on the floor or up vertically where you can press against them, or you put them up against the ceiling and apply a force, or you get a clamp on them, for instance, a screw clamp, and you apply a force. There are things that do apply forces, and we can see that those scales agree with the force that you apply. So do you or do you not agree now that the scales in your bathroom are force measuring devices?
No, they're not a force. They measure the strength of something, how much pressure can be applied.
That is a force.
So that
doesn't know the difference
force
between
is
force and pressure. Tell me the definition of pressure, please.
That force,
so it is a force.
that strength.
So it is a force.
Let him answer.
So you're now you've renamed force strength now, have you?
Right, Rumpus, let him just answer.
Sorry.
That force is the strength that the individual is able to apply to the scales. That's the origin. That's the origin of that strength.
Right, you think they measure pressure, don't you? You've demonstrated this. You don't understand what pressure is. So, for instance, if I were to stand on the scales with my feet flat on the thing, I would be exerting a force. If I then stood on my heels, so I exerted a much smaller area onto the scales, do you understand that I'd still be exerting the same force, but the pressure would be different?
If you were to take those scales underwater,
well, now let's just we can deal with the buoyancy issue in a minute. I want to get you to understand about the difference between force and pressure. If I stand on the scales, my feet flat on the scales, and then if I lean back, the scales will show the same weight, i.e. the same force in both circumstances, but I will be applying a different pressure in those two circumstances because I will be on my heels, and therefore the force will be going over a smaller area, and force divided by area is pressure. Now, you only seem to think you understand what pressure is. I don't think you understand what force is, because you always love to substitute the word pressure for force, but you don't understand what pressure means, because I don't think you understand what force means. And because you don't understand what either of them mean, you have no idea what you're talking about. But hopefully you understand from my practical explanation just now the difference between force and pressure, and that scales will still register your weight when you stand on them, however you stand on them, whether you're on tiptoes or on your heels, or if you even lay on them without touching the floor, they would show the same weight in all circumstances, and that's the force of gravity. That's your weight. It will measure your weight in all circumstances. But if you were to go on your heels or stand on your finger, then it would show still the same weight, but you would be applying a different force, a different pressure, because there's a smaller area over which you're exerting that force. Do you understand what I've just told you?
So, if you were to take your scales underwater.
Well, let's move. You have to do this. You're deflecting again. Can you please deal with the point that I've just made instead of being a devious little wanker and moving on to another subject? Do you understand what I described about pressure and force?
Well, if you were to take your scales underwater,
I'm asking you whether you understand. If you go into your bathroom,
Rumpus, let him respond. Maybe
he was going to go underwater again. He said he was.
Maybe that's part of the point. Just let him respond, and then we can pick it back up. Okay.
All right.
Right. Go on, Spurs.
Okay. What's the question?
Oh my God! Do you understand the difference between force and pressure, and that the scales would measure the same weight no matter how you orientated yourself on the scales, but you would be giving different pressure? And I'm trying to explain to you the difference between force and pressure. Do you understand the difference between force and pressure now?
Well,
that depends on which paradigm you're working on.
Oh my God!
Right. Spurs. Let me try and rephrase this for it. Right. So, imagine that you put your hand and push it down on the scale, right? And it weighs 4 stone, right? Now, do the same thing, but with just your finger, right? Mm-hmm. It's still going to measure 4 stone, but on that area you're pushing down with just your finger, there's more pressure than your whole hand pushing down to make the same weight. Does that make sense?
No. The only pressure and force is coming from you.
Yeah. Okay, but the pressure is different depending on if you use your finger to make the force down or your hand, right?
No, that would depend on the. That would be medium dependent, not
no. Right, okay,
Oh my
you're not
God.
understanding, right? Pressure is about force over an area, right? You understand that?
No, he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Pressure is
understand that.
pressure is a continuous physical force exerted on or against
Yeah,
He
an
doesn't
object, right?
understand.
No, right, okay.
So I'd just like to quickly interrupt Craig, just
Yeah.
for a second. I think we're just demonstrating here. I think I pointed out to Spurs the other day, he's got the education level of an 11-year-old, and here Craig and I are basically filling in the education that he missed between the years, I don't know, 10 and 14. And he's so stupid and so ignorant, we're having to fill in stuff that 12-year-olds understand completely in school, and this guy doesn't. Yet he thinks he's capable of talking about the scientific method, general relativity. He doesn't understand what acceleration is. He doesn't understand what force is, pressure, momentum, weight, mass. He understands none of these things. Yet he thinks he's entitled or qualified to discuss these issues. We're dealing with an utter, ill-educated, Dunning-Kruger afflicted moron here. Go ahead, Craig.
Right, so my point, Spurs, is that you can get the same weight on the scales by pushing your hand down in it or just your finger down on it, right? But now picture the area underneath your hand. The pressure underneath your entire hand pushing down is less than the pressure under just your one finger pushing down to get the same weight. Because pressure is about force and area, right? You're putting the same force on a smaller area, therefore
You concentrate on more.
That's what pressure is. So the pressure underneath your finger is greater than the pressure underneath your whole hand. Do you understand that?
Sure.
Right. Okay. We can move on from there. Rumpus, do you want to carry on from there?
Right. Well,
That's obvious.
I hope he's now. So now, hopefully, he will now understand why standing on the scales, feet flat on the scales, and will give you the same weight, even if you go on tiptoe. The scales will still register the same thing, but you would be offering a different pressure because the area is smaller. So hopefully, he's learned something 11-year-olds would learn: the difference between force and pressure. I still don't think he's absorbed that fact, but I'm just going to assume he has for the moment because it's not actually relevant to the discussion. Because what we were talking about is whether or not, well, he gets confused with pressure when I'm talking about but anyway, we'll go with this. So scales are force measuring devices. So no matter how you orientate yourself, in other words, how much you change your pressure, the weight that they register is the same under all circumstances, no matter how you orientate yourself. So that is a force being measured. So the scales are a force measuring device because when you pick them up and put them between your hands and you press the scales together with your hands, you also are applying a force, and they register the same thing. They have no idea whether they were on the floor and you're standing on them, or whether or not they're being pushed together by your hands. As far as the scale is concerned, there are just springs in a mechanical scale. Just springs are being extended by that operation of you pressing on them, whether you stood on them or you press together with your hands, because that's all they do. Because if you happen to know anything about springs, and this is Hooke's law, which is something you definitely won't know about, I'm going to mention it. A force that a spring is the extension of a spring returned is linearly dependent. The force that a spring returns is linearly dependent on the extension. So inside a mechanical scale, the springs are extending, they resist the force that's being pressed down. So they measure a force. And what would you like to call the name of that force that they register when you stand on them? Would you like to give that a name? Or your understanding of what they're measuring? We've got a name for that force that they register because they're force measuring devices. They measure a force, and we give a name to that force for something. When you put something on it,
do you know what that force is called, Chemo?
It's got a special name.
Chemo, you there? Spurs? He's still connected.
Okay, well, I think he's gone quiet because, I don't know, perhaps it's a little sort of quiet protest or something. That we give that name, we'll save you the working it out. It's called weight. We call the force that scales measure weight, and that's a force. And they're force measuring devices, and they measure the force. And that weight is caused by the gravitational attraction of your body to the center of the Earth. And we can measure it, therefore. So therefore, we can measure gravity. The gravitational force is therefore fully measurable, and it's the force that if you jump off a house and then fall down and hit the ground, that force you will become intimate with at that point, and very demonstrated. It's very big force, can be. depending on and when it's added to your kinetic energy and your momentum. So we can measure a force. We can demonstrate that in our 3D. In reality, there is a thing called gravitational force. If you'd like to give us another explanation to that force, then please go ahead. But we have got a very definite working explanation for it, and it's the force of gravity, because we can also measure that this happens in the Cavendish experiment when two balls also attract with one another, and we can demonstrate from knowing something about your mass what your weight should be on the Earth. And if you take your mass over onto the moon, say, we know that that's 1/6, and you weigh 1/6, and the scales will show 1/6 of the value, because the gravitational attraction between you and the moon is 1/6 of what it is here on Earth. You going to start to talk again, or are we just going to? Or can we? We'll just be.
Right,
we're just
Kimo,
pretend
you
you're not
there?
there. Here now.
Yes, I'm here.
Right. So you understand that the force a scale measures is weight, right?
In your heliocentric reality, yes, of course.
No, just not in our heliocentric reality, in reality in general.
Oh, you'd like to talk about reality? Okay.
Yes.
So the idea is that you have Newtonian gravity, which introduced a mechanical force, which suggested that there was a pulling mechanism between the two objects. And so Einstein, he came along.
Well, no, let's not go to Einstein yet. We haven't established yet whether or not you understand the scales on measuring people's weight. That is a force. Do you understand that yet?
In Newtonian physics.
Let's not get on to Newtonian just yet. Let's just to make sure we understand that scales measure forces, and we call that force of a body its weight. And that's a reality thing. That's nothing to do, we haven't done anything conceptual yet. We haven't gone into any models. All I'm trying to establish with you is that you've hopefully recognized that scales are force measuring devices, and that when you stand on them, there is a force being exerted on them by your body. And we call that your weight. Do you understand that?
Like I said, yes, in the heliocentric paradigm,
No, this is radical. There's no model here. Do you understand that they're registering a weight? The only information you need to know is, do scales measure a force? And you seem to have sort of accepted that. And whether or not they register a force when you stand on. That's the only piece of information. We don't need to worry about heliocentric models just yet. We're just dealing with how scales work. That's all I want to involve. I don't want to get into anything else. I just want to go empirically with this basic piece of reality. Do you accept that, therefore, they are measuring some sort of force when you stand on them? Do you accept that?
I've just said numerous times, Rumpus. Yes, in your reality, in your heliocentric world...
No, in your reality, do you... No, I want to know about your reality. Do you, in your reality, accept there is a force being exerted on these scales because they're force-measuring devices?
So, in my reality, how I understood it, Newtonian had a pulling force.
I don't want to know about Newtonian.
Rumpus,
I just want him to accept about forces on these scales. I don't want him to start going on set 5 rungs up. I just want to get him to understand this basic natural phenomenon that scales measure forces, number one, and number two, when you get and stand on them, they exert a force and they give you a reading of it.
I think he's going to try and explain his understanding, so just give him a sec to just get it out. All right, go on, Kimo.
Yeah, so I mean, what we've got, we started with the idea that the Earth is a globe, and then we had to explain, well, why are things attracted to the Earth? So Newton, the story goes, Newton was by the tree, the apple fell, and he came up with the conclusion that there was this pulling force here, gravity, objects being pulled towards the center of the core here, this iron molten core here. And so people were asking questions, they were searching, they were researching, seeking for this force. They tested this idea. They couldn't find this attraction. So in order to keep the heliocentric model... In order to keep this heliocentric...
Talk to us about your lunch. I mean, what did you have for lunch, Spurs? I mean, that's just as relevant to what I've been asked. We're discussing whether or not red scales measure force, and now you're telling us a little bedtime story that's not in any way, well, very slightly relevant, because you're trying to dodge the question. Why do you always dodge questions, Spurs? Is that because you know that you're thick and stupid?
Well, all right, Spurs. So, in your world, what is causing the scales to register a number? What is your explanation for it?
So, like I said, there is strength being applied to that device.
Can you define strength?
The only strength, yeah. So, if you have energy being applied to that surface, it will give you a reading. That's as far as it goes. That's the physics of it.
I mean, that's not the physics of it.
That is the physics
Strength
of
isn't
it.
it? You define. You say how strong something. So you can say a force is a strong force or a weak force. Strength is an adjective. So we're talking about, you can take a strong force, weak force, or the strength of something. But that's not. We're looking for a noun here. We're looking for a noun here, I suppose. And we want you to explain what this force is. And in physics, the fact that you've used the word strength instead of force, obviously, I mean, we know you don't know anything about physics at all below that of an 11-year-old. But we call something that pushes or pulls a force, and that causes something to move. We call that a force. That's the definition of a force. Something that causes something to change its state, its positional state, and give it a velocity. That's the definition of a force. So when we push down the scales, we cause the springs to move inside. We've caused them to move, and to cause them to move, you have to have applied a force. That's how physics calls things that causes things to move. So we give that name, we call that a force. That's the definition of force. I don't think you understand what a force is. So you've substituted your own little childish word of strength. In physics, we call that a force. So if you're going to say you're claiming you're using physics terms, how about using physics terms? And the physics term that you seem to have a real problem with in all your discussions, because you probably don't understand it, is a force. And a force causes things to accelerate, i.e. change their state from being stationary or to start moving faster than they were. That's what is a force. That's what we call the thing that does that. So there has to be a force that extends the springs inside a mechanical scale. And so, therefore, there has to be a force applied to those scales. And we would like you to explain to us where that force came from.
Okay, so in physics, a force is any interaction that, when unopposed, will change the motion of an object.
Yeah,
a force can cause an object with a mass to change its velocity, i.e. to accelerate.
Excellent. You're doing really well now. Well done.
So force can be described intuitively as a push or a pull. But the problem with that statement there, is the pull part, because in nature.
Right, but you now understand what a force is. So I mean, you've done really well. You've given 3.
That's why I said in your world. That's why I said in your reality. This is a force.
Well, hold on. This is in your reality.
In the real world.
Hold on. So are you denying those 3 things? You just gave
a pulling force, right?
Right, hold on. But you just those 3 definitions that you just gave to us about what a force is. Are you happy with them?
Rumpus, a pulling force.
Hold on. Spurs, did you just recite the Spurs? I want to know if you believed what you just told us. Spurs, did you believe what you just told us? Those 3 definitions you gave us.
Show me a pulling force, Rumpus.
Sorry, hold on. Do you agree with the 3 definitions? Hold on. Do you agree? Did you believe what you just said to us? Hold on. I want to know if you believe what you just said.
You said in physics.
I will. I'll get on to that. Spurs, I will deal with any question. Spurs, I will deal with any question, but I want to just make sure that
in the real world, you said we do deal in the real world, so show me a pulling force.
Right, so in the real world, do you believe there's 3 definitions of force?
I believe in the real world. Show me a pulling force.
Right, and I'm asking you, Spurs, that you just gave us 3 definitions of force. I want to know if you believe what you said.
So, Rumpus, I'm not responding until you show me a pulling force.
I will. Look, but Spurs, let's not jump onto something else. You've just given us 3 definitions. Before we move on, I'm happy to move on, but I want to know if you believed what you just said. About, your descriptions of a force, you gave us 3 definitions. Do you believe what you said, or do you just say that, I don't know, just to dodge the issue and to just keep us happy and then move on to a new subject? Did you actually believe what you said? Or are you being a liar as usual? Why? I mean, Spurs, if you ever asked me a question like that, I would say, yes, I believe what I say, but you're very reluctant to do that. Why?
One sec, Rumpus, let Kimo respond. So, Kimo, the question is, do you agree with the definitions of force that you've just read out? I think you've turned your mic off, Kimo.
Like I said, to a degree, I was trying to explain. Some of that sounds, we could work with that, but a lot of that is questionable, right? You see?
Like
so,
what?
For example, the pulling force. Can you demonstrate a pulling force?
Right, okay, I can. Let's suppose I gave you a rope, and then I pulled on that rope. You would then be pulled towards me with a pulling force.
So how did you do that? How did you pull it?
I pulled on the rope, and you were holding on the other rope. So there's a tension in the rope, and then you were holding on the other rope. You're holding onto it hard, and therefore you were pulled in my direction. So you were pulled towards me.
Did you touch the rope?
Yes. Oh my God. Let's try this again.
What?
We imagine a tug-of-war, you moron. You're one side, I'm the other, and I pull on the rope, and I pull harder than you, and you are pulled towards me.
Why did you touch the rope if you were going to pull?
Jesus Christ, you stupid wanker.
What? That's how you pull. How else do you expect to pull, Spurs?
Because you apply pressure when you squeeze the rope.
Yeah, and then you pull it.
So what?
Pull what? How can you pull? You
What do you mean,
squeeze
how can
tighter. Your hand gets tighter and tighter.
But you
You
pull
press
it towards
tighter
you.
and tighter.
All right, Spurs, if your arm is outstretched and you grab the rope and then you pull your arm towards you, you are pulling the rope with a pulling force.
Pulling. You're squeezing the rope tighter and tighter.
And pulling it towards you.
No, you're squeezing, pushing. You're pushing from the other side. It depends on your perspective.
No. You realise you can squeeze the rope and pull it, right?
So to the people on the other side, Craig, who are watching you so-called pull, what do they see? Do they see you pull?
Yes.
Yes.
No, they see you push away from them. They're pressing on their hand.
But you are pulled towards them. You feel a pulling force. If I
Pulling's
came
just a
behind you,
description.
Spurs-
It's not a reality function. It's not a function that we
What did you
actually
just
do.
say?
Spurs, I could come in front of you and I could grab your shirt. and I
Right,
could
Craig, if you
pull
want to have a
towards you.
discussion, we're going to have to get Rumpus out of this because you want to make sense of this. We're going to have to talk about
he's
this.
asking some valid questions.
No, Rumpus knows about this. He's heard about this. Obviously, you haven't. But if you want to get into this pulling idea of anything in nature where we pull a door, we squeeze the door handle, apply pressure to it, and we don't have
When
a
you
magical
pull it,
magical
direction.
tentacles.
Okay,
In
right,
our
so,
hand.
all right, Spurs, let me respond to that.
Yeah.
So what pulling force is applied if I place a magnet next to another magnet?
How does a magnet work?
That's irrelevant. You said that there has to be a pulling force, a physical pulling. What physical pulling force is happening there?
So if you put your finger between two magnets, what do you feel, a pull or a push?
You wouldn't feel anything unless the magnets squish it
If you put your
together.
finger between two magnets,
The magnets are pulling
you
towards
would
one
feel
another,
pressure.
and you would be
I'm asking you, Spurs, what pulling force has pulled that magnet towards the other one?
it hasn't pulled it. What's the mechanism? How did it pull it?
Magnetism.
Yeah, what's the mechanism? How did it grab hold of the other magnet?
No, we don't care about the mechanism. We care about whether or not there's a pulling force. So how this is created is utterly irrelevant. The point is
What?
that I can pull you towards me by grabbing your shirt. or
So
giving
how
you a
did that
tug-of-war
magnet
pulling.
grab hold
It
of the other
doesn't
magnet?
matter. It is clearly exerting a pulling
Right,
force.
so Craig,
How
we
it's
can't
doing
have
it
this
is irrelevant.
conversation here
Well, no,
with Rumpus in the house.
Right, okay. My point and Rumpus's point here is that when you put one magnet next to a stronger magnet, it's going to move towards it, right? There's an acceleration and there's a mass, therefore there's a force, right? So what
Yeah,
physical force has happened?
You don't know if from the North Pole it's being pushed to the other magnet.
No, I do.
you
Because
don't.
it only happens when I...
Don't get you off the
One sec,
principle.
Rumpus, one sec.
So
It only
don't
happens
get
when I...
give on the North Pole. He's trying
Yeah,
to
I know.
deflect
I know.
from the
It
issue.
only
Stick
happens
with the
when you...
principle of
It
pulling.
only happens when
Right,
you...
Craig, I'm not
Closer.
doing this. This is nonsense.
Wait,
This
wait,
could have
Kimo,
been a
wait,
really
wait.
good discussion,
Kimo,
Craig.
hold on.
and
Kimo, hold on. It only happens when you push the magnets closer together, and then all of a sudden there's this big attractive force that, bang, will make the magnets slam together. What is the
You've
physical
got to tell me the
pulling force that's
mechanism.
happening?
You've got to tell me how that works. How does it
We
grab
don't
the
need
other
to know how it
magnet?
works. We just need to know there's a force involved and it's pulling.
Yeah,
No, just because it looks like that doesn't mean
We
it actually
don't
is
need to
doing
know the
that.
mechanism. We just need to know there's a force and it's pulling. That's the only 2
Craig,
points we need to
another night,
understand.
my friend.
The mechanism is simple. The mechanism is magnetism. It's an alignment of electrons to allow the connection. I think he's gone.
That guy, I don't accuse this of. I've only accused about 2 or 3 other people. That guy is a compulsive lying wanker, and I really mean he's a liar, a blatant liar. I've only accused. I don't do this lightly. That guy is a devious, lying wanker, and he needs to be absolutely kicked. And here he doesn't understand what pulling is. He doesn't know what force is. He doesn't know what acceleration is. He doesn't know what momentum is. He doesn't know what pressure is. He doesn't know what energy is. He doesn't know what mass is. He doesn't know what weight is. And he thinks he's in a position to actually interact with other people and start lecturing them. The guy, and the way he deviously tries to deflect, you've got to be absolutely ruthless with not letting him get away with this devious. And he even has he's even tried to educate other people on how to be this devious. There's been occasions that people have witnessed him giving instructions on how to avoid answering questions.
Yeah.
And we've just seen it here tonight. He's an absolute devious little wanker.
Although it is good to know that I can win a tug-of-war by squeezing the rope.
Yeah. I mean, people have accused him of being a Poe, but I think he's too stupid to be a Poe. He's religiously engaged with this thing. You can see that he's educationally ignorant. He's not a clever person posing as one of these people. He's genuinely as stupid as he wants, and the only thing he believes in is God, and the Earth is flat. And he's prepared to use because he's got this issue. I think with any non-Christian, he can lie and cheat as much as is required because he believes he's doing God's work, and he mustn't be allowed to get away with this immoral and wankerish behaviour.
Yeah, I do think that I don't think he's a Poe. I genuinely think he is as dumb as he appears to be, because he can't understand the simplest of things. Like the whole thing about, is it a pulling or a pushing force, is so dumb because he simply doesn't understand that there's an acceleration. He didn't even understand what an acceleration actually was. Someone just sent me a meme for Spurskimo.
He doesn't know. When you was asked to define acceleration on here a few nights ago,
yeah,
he couldn't. And what's more, he thought F is equal to ma. A was area. We're dealing with someone who has not got an 11-year-old's understanding of physics, and because of that, and because this is the thing. By remaining ignorant and stupid, they're impervious to our reasoning, logic, and science. And they keep themselves ignorant because they use this shield of stupidity. If they can't then understand what you're saying, then they can just indulge their wishful thinking, saying, this is true, and I don't understand what this other person's telling me, so I'll just ignore it. By keeping themselves ignorant, they've got that shield of stupidity. And we can't poke through with our sword of truth and science because they've got this massive shield of stupidity that's invulnerable, because our sword won't work through this stupidity, because it can only work using weapons are only logic and evidence and science, and those won't work on people who don't accept logic, evidence, science, and reason.
Yeah, no, as Riley proved when I debated him earlier, they just have their own version of science, and they will stick to it religiously. You know, I tried explaining, no, that's simply not how it is in science. You're using something like natural, meaning not man-made, as an argument when it's just a misunderstanding of scientific terms, and you can't fix that. But I'm glad that Sleepy came on, because oh my god, that's a lot of material for videos, and not just me. Yeah. Anybody feel free to take any part of that debate and make videos about how badly Sleeping Warrior did there.
Yeah, I mean, also I think you could have exposed a bit more because you did mention, I think, like a chain of events. So, for instance, what the QE and the Riley line was there, that if I flick a switch or whatever, they also don't. God, I've got so many things to say. They can never cope with more than one cause. Yeah. They always like to think of just one thing, because they can never cope with a number greater than one. So if you have, for instance, something like the force of gravity, which is dependent on three things: the distance, the two masses. That's too much for them. They only talk about single cause. Whenever QE talks about a cause, he only ever talked about one cause. And this is, of course, what Napley's picked up, and now idiot, wankerish Chemo's picked up, is they just talk about one cause. They don't understand about an experiment having multiple variables, controlled variables, and also natural experiments. So possibly is another issue you can conduct what a natural experiment, where you don't, for instance, if you wanted to test Kepler's laws, and then you get someone like Riley or Schema then saying, well, how do you check that that's correct? Do you have to move the planet? No, we've got 8 proper planets and a number of dwarf planets, and we can test Kepler's laws of that. You've effectively got an independent variable in nature providing you with that independent variable variation, and then you can check the dependent variable of the velocity or the orbit or whatever of your planet or this period. And so there are lots of natural experiments you can do, and also observations. For instance, just like measuring how quickly something falls, that's an observation. You just can hold it up, or how long the day is. That's a scientific observation. And of course, they don't understand the word meaning of "and." In that definition of science, you'll see that Riley, with you as well, he's of experiment and observation. Now he thinks that means that anything you do has to be an experiment, which includes an observation. Not realizing the word "and" there is a set theory, like saying I've got a zoo with some zebras and some lions. That doesn't mean to say the lions and zebras are together. I can have a zoo with just the lions, or a hospital treats men and women. That doesn't mean to say there's a place where there are men and women being treated. You can have women in one bit of it and men in another. Yeah. And so there's a set theory, a union of the two, a union. The "and" is set theory. There is a union of the things of observations, and there's with a union of things that are experiments, and they come together to be science. And that union idea is also something that Spurs and Riley don't understand. And it's just what was my original point before I wandered off onto that one? Natural experiments where there are natural variations in your independent variable as well as observations, and that's a very important concept. So that's why we can do effectively natural experiments in cosmology, which is what you were challenged with by Riley, amongst other things. Oh, and of course by saying distance of planets and things, but also I don't know if you caught what I was posting in the chat about as you correctly said, there are lots of experiments that we can do to prove general relativity, including the precession of Mercury. I mean, you know all these precession of Mercury, gravitational
I wanted to get onto some more with
lensing. So yeah, I mean, he didn't really let you get to the point of he's starting to abuse you for quite a lot of the time in the end. But there are lots of observations and experiments, the natural experiments that we can conduct. And you're absolutely right about the independent variable with is it Tony's thing. And something like, for instance, things like you can control the force of gravity, which is the thing that Riley claimed. You can change the mass. So you can have two masses and measure the force between them, and then you can change the mass. So you can change the force of gravity. You can't change the physics. In everything that we do in man-made, that's another point I was trying to get onto. Everything man-made still has to use the laws of physics. We can't change the laws of physics. They're sort of implying that if you make something man-made, you can have your own laws of physics. We can have chips that behave in a particular way. Electrons that behave in a different way if we choose to. No, we have to work with the laws of nature. Just because we can manipulate objects to use them in different ways, that doesn't mean to say we're inventing new laws of physics. We're using the laws of physics and exploiting them. Those laws of physics are not man-made at all.
No. It's just constant trying to redefine stuff. Now, Tony wanted to come in, PhD Tony, and I know Professor Bell wanted to come in as well, so let me get them both a link. One sec. Professor Bell and Tony, I've emailed you both links. Oh, well, I will when my keyboard starts working for Professor Bell. I think I need new batteries for my keyboard. It keeps stopping.
Oh, and by the way, someone in the chat, I can't remember his name now, pointed out that he'd seen Chemo training up some woman as to how to dodge questions. And he thinks he's terribly clever at doing this. Yeah. By dodging the question. Where to us, it's obviously apparent, but I don't think you mustn't let these people get off the hook. I mean, I know you're quite good, actually, Craig, at pinning them down, but Chemo is a particularly slippery character, and you just cannot let him change the subject because he does that deliberately. And it just makes me. I'm much more sympathetic to other people who are just stupid. I mean, even QE doesn't annoy me as much as Spurs. At least QE, he's not quite as slippery.
No, QE's just straight up stupid. I'm sorry, but I honestly think, and I hope he hears this, I think Quantum Erasure is one of the dumbest that there is. And he is the epitome of Dunning-Kruger, because he thinks he's the fucking authority on stuff. I mean, it's his script they all run with, the whole, the independent variable stuff. And it's him that's come up with all this nonsense. And he is so stupid that he said that the double slit experiment was evidence of God.
Did he? Yeah. I think he's more intelligent than Spurs. I mean, at least I think.
I don't know. I honestly think QE's one of the dumbest.
He knows what a force is, I think. And I think he knows what pressure is. Although, of course, he doesn't know what gas pressure is. But at least he knows some of the basic things an 11-year-old. Spurs, as I say, he didn't know what acceleration was. He didn't know F is equal to ma, what the A was in that. He doesn't know what energy is. He doesn't know what mass is. He doesn't know weight is. Whereas at least QE's actually researched this, and although he claims that mass is not well defined, we know it is, of course, it's just the inertia of something, he at least has researched that and can read stuff, whereas I don't think Spurs can read anything, and he just goes with it, and I mean, Spurs, I
Spurs
think, is
can't read
educationally
Rumpus
remedial.
2020.
I mean, so I think he's quite a bit more stupid and certainly a lot less knowledgeable than QE. QE's got just a massive dose of Dunning-Kruger that's just more annoying. And well, I think actually the thing that most annoys me is when people are slippery and dodge questions. That's the thing that annoys me most. Even if you're stupid, I don't really mind you being stupid. Even if you've got Dunning-Kruger, but when you're being dishonest and slippery like Spurs is, that really gets my goat.
I think I've given both Tony and Professor Bell the same link there. Give me Professor Bell. I'm going to send you a new link. I sent you the wrong one. Bear with me. Tony, hello. How you doing?
Hello. I'm well, thank you. How are you both?
Oh, I'm. I don't know after that actually.
Agitated.
You should be. You should be quite elated, I think. I thought you did. I have to admit, it was early morning here, and I slept through most of your debate. But I thought you did an excellent job against Riley.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Let me just
the absurdity of.
Sorry, just give me one sec.
The...
While I get this done.
Yep.
All right. Go on. Yeah.
No, Tony. While Craig's doing that, say hello. Yeah, what's up?
Hello. How are you, Rumpus?
Yeah, good. I'm not too bad. Well, I had a bit of a tummy thing earlier today, but I'm fine now. Yes, I mean you had to deal with Spurs, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. That's right. I mean, you're now aware that he's one of the most slippery characters you'll meet. He really is absolutely infuriating. It's very difficult to keep your temper with him. I know you had trouble, and I do have trouble keeping my temper with him. He's really odious little slimy creature. So, and he knows nothing. I think. By the way, he claimed yesterday somewhere else. He said, "I speak to PhDs. That's what I do now." And then he was referring to his chat with you. And I thought, hold on, you're referring to when Tony was trying to explain to you what science was, and you didn't understand a damn thing. You think that's engaging with the PhD, it's their sort of level. And again, it's just a misrepresentation. The line he does, he's like, I'm talking to PhDs now, as though he's got some trying to pick up some sort of reflected glory from you, reflected qualifications. It's just so odious.
Hey, right, yeah. I've sent both Professor Bell and Tony the same link. Tony, I'm going to send you a new one, and hopefully that won't happen again. Professor Bell, hello.
Yes, hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Hang on,
you've got the watch page on. Professor Phil,
That's got the
watch page still on.
Yes, yep, I've got it off now.
Right. Oh, Tony's just come back in and... Sorry, Tony. What's happened is I've given you and Professor Bell the same link. I'm going to send you a new one, okay? So...
okay, no problem. I'm going to drop. I'll close this.
Yeah. My bad.
Is that because they're not supposed to speak then? Or have we now just...
No, it's been one at a time. Professor Bell will come back in a sec, and Tony will come back in on the new one that I'm about to give him.
I mean, I think Spurs actually, in terms of educational levels, is probably I can't think of anybody. I mean, even Leaky Brain, Brian Leakey, and Brian's Logic actually, I think, have some vague idea what force and acceleration are. Though I think quite possibly, I think actually Leakey might not. These are the worst of the worst. We're dealing with Spurs is just about the bottom of the barrel. That's a pretty deep barrel.
Oh my god, I totally screwed up giving them the links. Right, Professor Bell, you come back in on the same one, and then Tony, you should have a new one. You should be able to come in on now. I don't know how I mucked this up so bad.
Someone was asking in the chat if I had a channel. Indeed, I do, and I hope in the next month or so to be doing a little curvature test in the real world. Right,
we've got Tony back. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Right. That's Tony, and Professor Bell will come back in.
Okay.
Right.
I think Professor Bell was biting on his desk. I think in the chat he was starting to chew bits of his desk off as with what Spurs and Riley were saying. God.
Professor Bell, if you're in the chat, just come back in on the first link I gave you. Tony, thank you for joining again. Yeah. So you thought I did it right against Sleeping Warrior?
I thought you did. Again, I only caught sort of the last bit of it, but I think you did exactly what needs to be done. You got him into a point where he was arguing absolute absurdities,
Yeah.
So his argument about bridge construction, for instance. The example of this that I like to use is parachutes. So according to flat earthers, we can't say that parachutes save people's lives until we do a controlled experiment where we throw people out of planes without parachutes.
Yeah.
It's utterly nonsensical. It makes and no rational person can believe that that's how science needs to be performed in order to be valid. And you got him to commit to that. You got him to commit to that version of reality. And I think that clearly we're not going to educate him. We're not going to educate people like Spurs. The object is to sort of get them in their own words, use their own arguments to make themselves look ridiculous, and I think he did exactly that.
No, notice that when we finally got him to put him on the spot, asking him to explain something, i.e., how does he account for the force that scales show? Then he ran away, because that's the point where he had to defend a position. Because, of course, the classic line along the Nathan Oakley and the QE thing is that they don't have a model, though QE does have to some extent. Yeah. They only attack us. They never have a position that can be attacked. So when they are put on the spot, like, you please explain to me what the force is that's being registered by scales, that's when they depart, and as Spurs demonstrated. He does the same thing. Whenever you get into a corner, and then he can't think of an answer, he just runs away, and then all makes an excuse like he did. It's classic trick.
Well, I think you make excellent points about his debating technique. He does just try to slide and evade, and it is very frustrating because he will make it. Sort of in my discussion with Spurs, I was trying to remain polite for as long as I could, but he would just keep asking the same questions over and over again, and I would explain it, and he would just ask it again.
Well, yeah, the trouble is, what he doesn't understand, I think there's a genuine problem here. When you speak to him, he actually doesn't understand what you're saying because he's so stupid and ignorant. And what you've got to do, unfortunately, with these things, you've got to keep on going lower and lower and lower in the intellectual level that you're using until eventually you hit the level they can work at, and then you've got to build up again. So I think with you're naturally used to talking to intelligent people. You didn't go low enough to engage with him.
Well, I think
you've got to think down to these people. It's really hard work to think how down you've got to go. And when we established he didn't know what acceleration was, F is equal to ma, you suddenly, pressure is, then you realise what you're dealing with, and so they genuinely have no idea what you said. And of course, he tries to cover up this ignorance by just then deflecting. He doesn't understand what you're saying half the time.
Yeah, well, I think they actually will. What you were just describing, they actually willfully use on many occasions because they insist that you make it simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler until you get to the point where you've actually oversimplified, and then they'll attack you for not having a complete understanding of the topic. And so there's a point. There's a point at which you just have to go, look, this is as simply as I can explain it. And if you don't understand it, then I'm going to suggest that the problem is you, because I have various metrics on my side that suggest that I do understand this, and that I am well qualified to have an opinion on it, whereas you don't. So you can persist in your inability to understand if you prefer, but it's your problem. It kind of. I had a discussion. You were here for my discussion with Mind of God, and I kind of thought I hit that point when I said, look, it's not science's job to make the evidence we have persuasive for you. Either you agree that the evidence, either you agree with scientific evidence and the accumulation of it and the testing of it, or you're disabled. You can't understand it. You can't, and it's sad if you don't. It's sad if you don't.
They don't want to understand. I say that they've got this shield of stupidity. They like to have that shield of stupidity, and they can't understand you, and therefore they think they can dismiss it because they don't understand you. The other thing I want to point out as a debating technique is the hyper-skepticism, which is what you were basically talking about. You'll say something like something basically physical. How do you know that? Give me a citation on that thing you just said. Oh well, no. And then you say, give me a citation on thing. Give me the citation on the trigonometry. Give me a citation on the geometry you're using. Give me a citation on 1 + 1 = 2. And I also want a citation on that 3 × 4 = 12.
I started using that against Riley. You kept saying things, so I just kept asking him for citations, because if he's gonna tell me that time cannot be an independent variable, then he's going to need to give me a citation to prove that, because I can literally pull up hundreds of citations to show that time can be an independent variable. So
the duration. I mean, you got it right there. But time is a duration. You can stop and start, for instance, how long you put something in the oven, or how long you allow a chemical experiment to occur, or how long you allow something to drop. So there are lots of ways where you can either have time as your dependent variable or independent, because you can say, how long does it take, for instance, to produce, 2 kilograms of products in your chemical reaction? So there's a time where that's the dependent variable, or you can determine you're going to leave it in your turkey in the oven for a certain length of time, and then it becomes your independent variable. So that's a time duration, of course. And that's also what you're interested in. You don't need to know you don't want to use absolute time. You don't want to know since the age of the universe what your turkey's doing. You want to know from when you put it in the oven and when you took it out. And that's your time duration. And you have full control over time durations. You do not need to control absolute time or the flow of time. You can chop and have any length of time you want. And of course, you can change time when it passes, the rate of time pass, by going up higher or lower, or going up in a spaceship or on the moon.
I didn't even get to that.
You can also control that.
That was really my next point about relativity, is that time literally passes at different altitudes from the Earth, and this is
well, you can also look at.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, you didn't hammer that home, Craig. You did say it briefly. He asked you for the independent variable with the time dilation. You quickly said altitude. You didn't hammer home and said, yes, I can control how quickly time passes by changing my altitude. But you said it, but you didn't really hammer it home so you got off the hook on there.
So the decay rates of very fast-moving radioactive atoms or particles or subatomic particles.
Muons is the classic.
Yeah. So the faster they move, the longer they seem to last before they decay. There are just so many examples of this, and I have to say here, I'm a mathematician who moved into geophysics, so my understanding of relativistic effects is not as comprehensive as.
No, that's special relativity we're talking about there, whereas we were talking about general relativity.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So it's a good thing that I said that this isn't my speciality. So, and it's why. Okay. Thank you. But there are so many examples of this, and they keep on trying to shoehorn, and they've got a definition of science that is just completely ill-suited to a lot of real-world problems. Understanding Earth's geological past or potential geological future or climate future, you can't do that with experiments, right? Not with physical experiments.
Well, that's why they call it pseudoscience.
Yeah,
that's the point. That's why they keep it being a pseudoscience. All the geology and paleontology and all that stuff, they claim that's pseudoscience because you can't conduct experiments. But I would argue you can do the natural experiment. So, for instance, if you can see other worlds or something, or other suns, you effectively do have an independent variable: the size of the sun, the mass of the sun, the age of the sun, and so effectively it's like having a laboratory in which you can change the age of the sun or the mass of the sun, but you don't need to bother with that. Nature does it for you. So effectively, you do have a natural experiment.
Yeah, that's right. And in the case of Earth, you can look at past conditions and say, okay, what's the difference between now and then, and start getting a grasp. If the Earth was warmer or colder in the past, what was it that made it warmer or colder? Can we get a handle on that? And so you can gain an understanding of the nature of the physical system you're trying to understand by looking at various points in the past and seeing how your hypotheses stack up. But they're perfectly happy to just write off huge sections of science because it doesn't mean anything to them. But it is, as you say, it's just they're prepared to scorch the entire world of engineering and science in order to maintain their fictional belief system.
That's right.
It's
win a
really
debate.
quite.
Yeah,
They
they'll
have
do
to.
anything. I mean, the classic one I use is if someone says to demonstrate your hyperskepticism, say, Craig, what's your name? And then Craig might say, well, it's Craig. And I say, well, prove that. Well, I've got it on my birth certificate. Well, show me your birth certificate. Well, I've got it. I can go and get it. Well, that's a fake one. I prove it's not a fake one. Prove that your parents didn't make it up. Prove that your parents are who they are. Prove you're not fostered. I mean, you can go down this line of debate. It's a debating trick which they use all the time, sort of hyperskepticism, as I call it. And it's an absolutely disgusting debating trick, and it works with anything. But you've got to recognise that's what they're doing, and then say, this is the technique you're using. Yeah. It's an odious, devious little thing, and just hit them with it.
Yeah.
Of course,
No.
I'm just saying. So I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with this scene, but yes, when you see this in action, you've got to come down right pretty hard, and particularly someone like Spurs is a super slippery character, whereas you're used to talking to intelligent people with an honest inquiry. I mean, you do meet the odd flat earther. I mean, there was a guy called Mark Doxey, and then there was a guy called Jose, who runs a hangout elsewhere, who was an original flat earther, and they were actually genuinely interested, and they'd been sort of, with the lack of education or whatever, or possibly semi-religious issues, and then if you just sort of, but they are interested in exploring the truth, they are engaging honestly, and then it's a completely different experience then. Whereas these people are not interested. They're going to use their shield of stupidity, and they're not interested in this debate. They're only interested in finding some tiny hole in your argument and then exploiting it, and then spending the entire time on that to somehow discredit you.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a couple of points that that we need to concede. And one is that everybody has a right to their religious faith, right? But for me, I was raised in a Catholic household. I grew up Catholic, and I'm no longer religious. But it never seemed to me that that you could use your religion to dictate which portions of science you can accept. Your faith is your faith. If you want to have your faith, that's fine. All science is ever claiming to do is say this is what we have evidence for or against. Is the evidence consistent with what you're suggesting? That's science's role.
Did you see the Ken Ham debate? I think it was famous about 5 years ago, in which he basically said, if you present me evidence in the real world that says X, and in the Bible it says not X, then he'll go with the Bible every time. So if there's any conflict between science and the Bible, and he literally, something like the arcs, the Great Flood story is a classic case. If the Bible says there was a Great Flood, the Earth, and they measure it out to be 4,000 years from the literal interpretation of the Bible, then I'm afraid they're going to say, if you present evidence against that, I'm just going to say, no, you're wrong. So unfortunately, it can be a conflict.
My question would then become, in what way is the existence or otherwise of the flood relevant to Christ's message? So Christian morality and Christian theology don't seem to be dependent, and there are points in the Bible that we can show are inaccurate. Hell, it logically contradicts itself in two successive passages in Proverbs. It says
you can go and look up. There's a website devoted to the contradictions in the Bible, and there are 2,000 ones they cite. But they don't care about that. They don't accept them. They say, well, it's something to do with an interpretation or something. I mean, something like, for instance, the number of people that saw Jesus come out of the tomb. In the different Gospels, it's 1, 2, or 3. Which one do you accept? So there are these contradictions. But they just say they just believe in the Bible, and they're prepared to ignore those contradictions somehow. I'm not quite sure how. But what you were pointing out as if they were saying, but surely the flood has got nothing to do. Well, if you believe that the Bible's inerrant, and if you challenge that in any way, they're going to defend the flood just as much as they can defend the Christian theology.
Yeah. Again, but yet you're kind of. I think I'm failing to communicate my point, which is that obviously they're not going to be swayed by any rational argument. So when we're in conversation with them, our audience is actually anybody who's watching or listening or reading who might be swayed. And if they've got a religious proclivity, I want to make it clear in any discussion that I have that I'm not attacking religiosity. You're free to have your faith if you want, but the role of science is just to tell you what our evidence is consistent with, and what our evidence tells us about the nature of the world. So if you do want to be religious, whichever religion, I might draw the line at, say, Mayan blood sacrifice or something like that.
Oh, damn.
But you know,
just
but
as you replied, then, Craig.
Aye. The one religion I chose. For fuck's sake.
But you know, this isn't. You know, they do try to play the victim card sometimes with, you know, when the subject does get to religion, and they do like to make it look like they're being persecuted for their religious convictions. And I just think that we should bear in mind that, you know, they're doing that to manipulate audience members. And we need to not play into their narrative. We need to sort of be aware of the manipulation games that they're playing. Keeler, unfortunately, is unwell and has had to leave the chat, but she makes extremely good points about the persuasive techniques that these people use, even when they're talking to us, even when we think that they're in discussion with us. What they're trying to do is just create a false impression for people in the for the audience members, and I think the techniques we use to combat that need to be refined a little bit.
Yeah, I find that talking with flat earthers, it is more about refining your arguments against their points, because it's actually very, very hard to have a scientific conversation with a flat earther because they've got such a twisted version of science. So when I debate a flat earther, I try to just rip apart their points rather than focus on the science, because they don't understand the science, and the debate has become more about learning the flat earth argument than it has the science in refutation of it.
Yep.
I think one good technique, as I was trying to do with Spurs there, is you keep on going further and further down until you find a point of agreement, and then you try and build up from there and then show the logical progression, and then the evidence that exists to go one way or the other. So, you know, it's only when you get to a point of agreement, like whether or not scales are registering force meters, then if they don't accept that, then you sort of keep on going down and down until finally you do meet together, and then you have to build up from there. If you come from the top, you know, there's such a gulf of their understanding between you and theirs. You can't just tell them, I don't know, bending of space-time, whatever, and then you have to get down to where they agree. And something like gravity, for instance, that Riley used. I mean, we can demonstrate also with the scales that there is a force in this world, so you need to explain that. And of course, it's because in the 3D world that we live in, this manifestation of it's an inertial force from the 4D world, and we know that the 4D world, the generator is right because of all those predictions that it makes. We can't explain just using a 3D model. Mm-hmm. I've forgotten my point now, but I'm sure I did have one. Golf anyway.
Yeah, Tony, I'll let you finish your point, and then I'm going to start reading super chats and wrap this up because it's been quite a long night for me.
I was actually going to go to one of the super chats, but I can wait if you're since we're going to get there anyway. Did Phil eventually get here, or did
no? He was having technical problems, but we'll get Phil on another time.
Okay. All right, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably chewed half his laptop to pieces while we're listening to Spurs. I think that was the problem.
Yeah, probably
punched it. Yeah, when you smashed a laptop against the wall and bitten half the keyboard off, then I suspect it has got technical problems.
Yeah. But tonight has been amazing, guys. I smashed my record for live viewers, 1,200 plus. Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. I've gained a whole bunch of new members, and obviously I've had loads of super chats and stuff come in. The support constantly blows my mind. I can't say it enough that I'm constantly honestly blown away by the fact that you guys support me so much and you want me to keep doing this, and it means the world. I've had a couple of PayPals. I did read some earlier. I've had another one come in. I don't want to dox you but it's from SA for $10 US. Says, great job, embarrassing dumb fuck of the year 2019. He was bad for out visiting the same old tired arguments, but exposed himself when you called him on not having citations for time and the architecture stuff. Yeah, that's one of my tricks at the moment, is just demanding they actually back up the shit that they say. Better charge for 5 New Zealand dollars says, I'm going to have to start calling you Ralph because you wrecked him. Good work. Thank you. IMD Fox, another new member. Thank you. For €5, he says, how can Riley scramble up science yet can't answer the simple questions I sent him? Good job. Keep it up. Flat Earthers don't answer questions. I think Dr. Purcell and Rumpus were putting it very well there. Their entire stick is about not answering questions. So, yeah. Nathan Thompson, for $5 says, Sleeping Warrior saying you can measure the passage of time, but not time, is like saying you can measure meters per second, but not acceleration. So very dumb. And then we've got PhD Tony, who is in the chat with us. $10 Australian says, the absurdity of Riley's position is mind-blowing. In his world, we cannot claim parachutes save lives unless we do a controlled experiment where we throw people out of planes without them. Yeah. Anything else you want to say on that, Tony?
It's just, I think, you guys did a fantastic job of just refusing to allow them to define what science is, and I think just we need to point out how absurd it would be if everything was done using the standards that they demand. We'd be killing people left and right. We'd be building bridges, driving trucks across them and letting them crash into a ravine, wasting money and lives. It's nonsense. Transparent garbage.
Huge arse for $5 says, would Riley make me a judge if I got all I knew of the law from Google? No? Then why on earth does he think he knows anything about science? It's called Dunning-Kruger. And I know we throw around Dunning-Kruger a lot, but the actual story of how they came up with the Dunning-Kruger and everything is really, really fascinating. And I think anybody should go up and look up where Dunning-Kruger came from. JL Truth for $4.99. JL Truth stood in for me the other night on Modern Day Debates. I haven't been that well. I've been taking some new medication at night, and honestly, I couldn't wake up for about 3 days. So JL Truth stood in for me. Thank you very much for that. He says, duration of time is not time. I almost binned my phone. Better charge for 5 New Zealand dollars says, I'm blaming you for Spurs, Jessica G. You asked for team not to be here when you got back. JB for $5 says, FTFE punched to the nose, scored a takedown, choked Riley until he tapped out with 4 minutes left. Awesome job, except not having your degree at all times. Yeah, shame that I don't have certificates with me. But I have posted them on my community page if you want to go back and have a look.
Can I just comment that analogy requires that Riley has a brain for which oxygen supply is necessary.
Yeah.
So I'm going to reject it outright.
Raven Zero for $2 says, FTFE, I need a new monitor. My gosh, Sleeping Warrior is so stupid. FTFE Incorporated takes no responsibility for damaged equipment or faces that were the result of what you guys have just watched. Heezer for €10 says, I can only think Riley is a Poe. He knows when to ignore certain words and when to attack on another, and he always tries to divert or keep repeating the question when he doesn't have an argument. Yet that is just flat earthers in general. That was, I think, around about my 200th flat earth debate, and they're all pretty much the same. Schrodinger's cat for $2. Spurskimo is here. Yeah, a lot of people think he's a Poe. IMD Fox for €2 says, Spurs, why is there a horizon if the world is flat? Magic, I think. The Sun Express for $5. Sorry, what was that, Rumpus?
You would still have a horizon if the Earth was flat. Well, but even if it was infinite, if you had an infinite flat Earth, you would still have a horizon.
It wouldn't be as defined as it is, though.
No, that's right. It'd be blurrier. It would
be
blurrier, yeah. But it would still be there. It would still be a line. It'd be a slightly blurry line, but nonetheless, you would still have a horizon on a flat Earth.
The Sun Express for $5 says... What, Tony? What are you laughing
at? Just Phil Bell just put into the chat, he is still using ammonium. So, in reference to Riley's metabolic. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Oh man, I should have asked him if he needed to go to the toilet throughout that debate. The Sun Express for $5 says a gravitational lens confirms space-time, and wouldn't you know it? It can be directly observed. Yeah, I tried explaining that to him. Glass Monster for $2 says NASA is real. Yep, they absolutely are. JL True for $4.99 says Saturday prep. Riley is to frying pan as Spurs is to fire. Sounds about right. Tim Pryor for $12 US says, Craig, they have all the they all have to equate gravity into building bridges or they would fall. Sleeping Warrior, can you show evidence of one time that's happened? Dumbest question ever. Think about it. Yeah, he was literally asking me for a time when someone hasn't done their job properly and people died.
Yeah, well, I'd suggest that you go to any kindergarten and watch kids try and build stuff out of blocks.
Yeah.
They quickly learn you need to get you need to get your model of gravity right. Anyway,
the plot hole.
I think you've got to be a little bit careful on this gravity thing. You could argue, and I think I myself and Blue have made this case before, there are ways of dodging understanding mg in terms of gravity, the little g, and you can just say, well, this weighs this amount and there's a force that exists. So it can be a little bit dodgy to use the architecture argument sometimes, I think, and you've got to be a bit careful about whether they have to understand, whether architects, all they need to know is that something weighs a certain amount, there's a force that goes down, but you could argue that's all they need to know, rather than necessarily... and then there is a force there. They don't necessarily need to know that it's gravity. They just know that if something, beams and things, and there's a stress on them, and you can sort of...
Well, aeronautical engineering, however... Aeronautical engineering is a little bit more sophisticated because then you have to understand how the acceleration varies and the trade-offs with pressure. You need to have some confidence about the degree to which gravitational acceleration due to the Earth changes with altitude.
Really?
You need to understand that. Well,
really?
You need to understand that it's small. You need to understand that it's small, and we have demonstrated that it's small. So there are if you want to actually properly solve for in a fully rigorous sense for terminal velocity, then you have to account the difference in gravity with altitude. Now, this is the difference between that and the uniform gravity is only really important in extreme cases. But my point would be actually, as engineers and as an observational science, we have reassured ourselves about the behavior of gravity through the atmosphere. And we use it when we're designing various craft.
Actually, that's another point.
Which I get.
Sorry.
No. I guess I'm not really addressing your point.
Actually, one interesting thing about the fact that the value of little g varies with altitude can only happen on something that's not flat. Because if you had a flat thing, then the value of g, I don't know if you can think of it like the gravitational field would be linear going upwards, and that means it would not diverge, which means it wouldn't get any weaker with height. And therefore, the value of g, the acceleration, would not change with altitude. The fact that it does, obviously the fact you can see from an airplane, you can see pictures of the bloody curve, but nonetheless, if you accept that g varies with altitude, assuming they wouldn't, then you could say, oh look, there's proof of it can't be flat. So of course, if you've got gravity in a flat Earth, you've got a problem anyway, because it'll all crumple up into a sphere at the slightest provocation.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Okay.
I
mean, there's a certain. I can't remember what the size of bodies are before they become a sphere. It's spherical. It's something like it's a couple of tens of miles or 100 miles or something. I can't remember what it is now. Where there's sufficient force to make anything become spherical.
Right, so the plot hole for $2 says for your recovery medicine. Thank you, I'm going to need it. Stringer News 1 for $5 says Spurs think that plum bobs contain plum fruits. Priceless. Yeah, he's a fucking idiot.
He did seem to suggest that, yes. We used a lot of Spurs also, when you were being quizzed about how surveying things work, by the way, you were being asked, Spurs was asking whether or not, where's the plumb bob? Of course, it's internal to these auto levels and things. So they do have a little plumb bob inside them, but it's internal. So when he's trying to get on, he said, this is the hyperskeptic route, saying, go on, Craig, prove to me there's a plumb bob inside those theodolites. Go on, prove to me, show me now. But of course, we don't. It's like saying prove that atoms exist. Now I want to see an atom. I want to see an atom in my. Show me the semiconductor in my. There's a semiconductor in my CPU in my computer. Show me now. Show me now. This is giving you these impossible challenges, and you can't pull apart bloody auto level in front of them. But you have to know that internally there is a plumb bob. We can't show you at a second's demand. Although presumably you could show a deconstruction of one on. You had to Google that and spend 10 minutes finding this bloody stuff for them, and say they like to give these impossible challenges to us, and then think, he thought he had you there, and he's probably going to go away tomorrow. It says he does. He'll make a video or going to hang out and say, bloody Craig couldn't tell me he was a plumb bob in an auto level theodolite thingy.
Yeah.
It's a horrible.
I'm sure that they're going to take a lot of things that I have said and try and make gotchas out of it. I absolutely know that's what's going to happen. Nathan Oakley and QE, they're going to have a field day with that thing, but it's all right because it just gives me more fucking evidence, more ammo to refute. I was very specific with the way that I did that debate. I let Riley, I don't want to say I let him run the conversation, but I let him say the things that he was trying to say. I wanted him to get out these points so that I could say, point out how stupid they were, and I didn't want to overrun him by demanding stuff at the start. I wanted him to get his rhetoric out, and I think I did that quite well.
Yeah, I think letting him speak, I think is a good thing to do. So there's a material you can then go back on.
Yeah.
I must admit, I'm possibly a bit more. If they say something wrong, I tend to come down on them like a hammer straight away, particularly with some devious little git like Spurs. But yeah, you're right to let them develop a certain amount, and then so you can then attack it. If you do what I do and just go banging them straight away, possibly you don't let them expose themselves to the same extent as perhaps as you hopefully did to Riley.
Someone's just sent me a message in Discord. According to Arwen, who was watching the debate on Sleeping Warriors channel, time falls under supernatural.
Okay, all right.
There we go. That's a good one.
But
when you do, if you're going, they deny time. Yeah, let's not forget these people deny time. Many of them, they claim it's just a concept. It doesn't actually happen. They deny gravity, which is something you can measure in your bathroom on some bathroom scales. They deny things go different. They deny sunsets and where the sun goes. These people are just reality deniers as well as science deniers. Just ridiculous.
So, the concept that air pressure doesn't exist. I like that actually you engineered Spurs into arguing against electromagnetism while using a computer. So we don't understand electromagnetism, but your computer works.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you care to explain how that happens?
Magic is the answer. All right, on with the super chats. Farsight86 for £20. Thank you very much. FTFE, it was such a pleasure to finally catch a debate live, and especially with it being against Mr. DFOTY 2019 himself. Well, thank you very much for joining me for the first time. I'm glad to have you here. Iliamoon for $5 says, I would rather suffer from bone spurs than speak to Spurskimo. Yeah, it's understandable. It is frustrating. Dan Robinson for £6.66. Hail Sagan. Can pressure and gravity denying Flerfs explain siphoning fluids from one level to another? That was one thing I was going to get into with Riley if we got there. And I'm actually going to make a video about that. Crafty Keela for €2 says, well done, mate. I don't know how you stayed so calm. Practice is the answer. Otkaji for $2 says, check your email for my meme. Yeah, I think I've added all the memes that I've had to the folder. Sun Express.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go on.
SIFDK mentioned that Riley had said that I was responsible for the content of Merriam-Webster, and I just, because I missed the first half hour of the thing, I actually went back and actually caught the comment where he was complaining that I somehow was manipulating, or at least seemed to be, the contents of Merriam-Webster, which I thought Sif just reminded me, so that's quite amusing. Anyway,
so I'm now going to refer to Merriam-Webster as the Rumpus Dictionary.
Yes.
Sun Express for $5 says, Chemo insists on using a plumb line. Should we start measuring in cubits again? We don't want to measure in cubits because that falsifies the Bible. John Watson for £2 says, I've seen fireballs pass from horizon to horizon. I think many of us have if we spent time looking at the sky.
Oh, that was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That claim and then being able to refute it.
Fucking idiot. Syed Ahmed for $1.99 says, Rumpus rules. Got a fan there, Rumpus.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, whoever that was.
That was Syed Ahmed.
Syed Ahmed, thanks very much. Hope I didn't. I have seen a number of people who've been complaining I've been too noisy and talking over Tony, so I'm obviously not a fan. I don't have got some.
It's all right.
anti-me
Rumpusing the show is what you do, right?
Thanks. I get special license, sorry, Craig. Thanks.
Yeah.
So sorry, Tony, if I've been over talking you.
That's okay.
IMD Fox for €5 says Spurs explain the direction of EURL if there is a container. He couldn't, I can tell you that much. Tim Pryor for $5 says a flat earther saying we're talking about relativity, about reality always gives me a chuckle. Yeah, they're not really the ones to talk about reality, are they? Crafty Keela for €2 says chat, let Spurs see you say po. I still don't know. I just think he is that stupid, honestly. Badron88 for $5 says we can detect a rate, okay, but what causes that rate? Insert Nathan Thompson Jeopardy theme. The force of gravity. No, I've been told that we're never allowed to play Nathan Thompson singing the Jeopardy theme ever again. Although my video on Simon Dan's channel has had about 250,000 views of people seeing Nathan Thompson sing the Jeopardy theme tune. It is quite painful. Scotty McDougall for £2 says, does he deny a force when he's constipated? Boom. Chris Kilroy for £1.99 says, Rumpus, you're a fucking lead. Wait for it. End.
I'm a lead end.
Leg. Wait for it. End.
Leg end.
I'm a leg end. Oh, right.
Legend. Legend.
Thank you very much. I'm getting about 50 people complaining about me and 50 people aren't. So
you're like Marmite. They either love you or hate you, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do that. I'm aware of that.
Badron88 for $5 says, flat or globe is irrelevant to this point. Scales measure weight, yes or no? The answer was yes. Bella Charge for two New Zealand dollars says, a magnet, you dummy that pulls. Yeah, absolutely. Scotty McDougall for
the pulling thing. The pulling thing. Oh my God, the pulling thing. Jesus Christ.
So stupid.
Oh.
Scott.
I keep on. Sorry, I'm going to say this is a meme of mine, but I keep on being amazed at the things they come up with because we are restricted to what science restricts us to. Our imagination is restricted, but they don't have these restrictions and constraints in science that we have. Their imagination can run riot. So Spurs, was it 6 months ago, claimed you can't have gas pressure. Now he's claiming you can't have pulling forces, and that time isn't a thing. And what other things we were talking about? You know, suddenly these things that you would never consider possible to change, a challenge. They just let their imaginations run riot as though they're in some sort of fantasy world. It's an and you can never predict. You can never predict the amazing thing that comes next. I keep on being shocked. Like people say, "Don't be shocked by the next thing that comes," and then I'm shocked again. I can't help it. I'm never ready for it.
Yeah, and and Riley coming up with the whole. Well, you can use maths to calculate anything. I can calculate the force to pull some horns off your head. What fucking horns? I don't have. What?
Heliocentric model horns, great. Yeah. Heliocentric model horns.
Oh my God. Scotty McDougall for £2 said... Sorry, go on, Tony.
Well, I was just going to comment on Spurskimo saying, I want to see this before I believe. Okay, well, you may want that, but science doesn't care what you want.
Yeah, science never cares about feelings and what you want.
Sorry, Tony.
No. I was only going to waffle. So
okay. Now I've got another key. Sorry, I think people are boring with my memes here. The other thing I believe that to prove something to a flat earther, he's got to experience it in his bedroom, underneath his bed, where he spends most of his time. And that's the only time they see something or can feel it underneath their bed. That's the only time they'll accept it. Other than that, everything else is pseudoscience.
Yeah, that's why I keep saying we should send Flerfs to space. Don't bring them back. Just send them to space.
Like the restaurant at the end of the universe, where they sent off 1/3 of the population, used this 1/3 of the population by claiming the planet was about to be destroyed, and then we send you off the telephone sanitizers and financial consultants. We've got a ship specially for you lot. So it's got 1/3 of the population was sent off into
Captain
space
that spends his time in the bath. That was amazing.
Yeah, that's one.
If anyone has never read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy trilogy in 5 parts, what are you doing with your life? It's the best book that's ever been written. I can literally recite the first paragraph of the first book. Deep in the uncharted backwaters of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a completely insignificant yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is a completely unregarded blue and green planet whose 8 descendant life forms are so amazingly primitive they still think digital watches are a pretty good idea.
Well, if you're going to quote that from, I'm going to quote from the fourth book, So Long Thanks for All the Fish. At the start, there is a guy in a lorry driving along at the start, and there's I can't remember. I think it was oh God, what's the main guy in the Earther, Flat Earth, the main Earther guy?
Arthur Dent.
He's falling behind in a car, and then this guy in the lorry, it's pouring with rain. Wherever he goes, it's always raining. He then he held this car back if Arthur Dent was driving it. It finally managed to get past, and he felt bad. He felt good about feeling he felt good that he kept this Porsche behind him, but then he felt a bit bad about the fact that he felt good about it. But then he felt good about the fact that he felt bad about feeling good about it, and then he went away happy. I mean, that sort of, that sort of encompassing a little thing like that is a deep insight into the human condition and being funny in a paragraph are just hilarious.
No, I think one of my favourite things about the entire 5 series of books is how Arthur Dent learns to fly by jumping off a large building and missing the ground.
He didn't even have to jump off a large building. He used to jump off beds and miss the ground just from I think it was just off a chair.
Yeah, he's just got to get distracted at the last minute and then he forgets to hit the ground. Brilliant.
And miss,
Right, Scotty McDougall for £2 says, Flerfs hurt my head. Please make them stop. Please. Been trying, mate. It's not working. Crafty Keeler for €2 says, chat time again to show Spurs that he is a Poe. Right, chat. Spurs Poe. 1 for yes, 2 for no. IMD Fox for €5 says, using religion like this is like stolen valor. It's stolen faith. Yeah, that makes sense. And we've got, oh my God, I just jumped. Minus for 20 Donkey Kong dollars says, Spurs is pushing himself off before going to sleep. Ooh. Gently's channel for £2 says, have to go now, but it's been epic. Thanks, FTFE. Thank you, Gently. Peep Eater for $4.99 says, make sure you add another 2 ticks on the rage quit counter, 1 for pissing warrior and 1 for Spurs. Yeah, absolutely. Timestar 78 for €2.29. Pull it, Spurski. You'll feel much better. I don't want that image in my head. Stop it. Macabre Maleficia for $5 says, James took away Nathan's wrench. Could somebody please give me the story? From what I understand, during the debate that I was supposed to be in, that J.L. Warren stood in for me with team against the 2 creationists, towards the end, Nathan went on a blocking rampage. So he's had the wrench taken away from him, which is a good thing. And
just a shout out here, because I think that the person who pointed out Nathan's poor behaviour with the wrench was Anti Hervensula.
Yes, well done, good job. Absolutely. It looks like I'd say an even mix of 1 and 2s. I don't think people are sure if he's a Poe or not.
There was a string of 1s. I didn't see any 2s. So, okay.
Yeah, there was a string of 1s.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Well, 42. There's some 42s in there now.
Well, 42 is the answer, of course. We just don't know what the question is. I want to go and read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy again now. I loved that book so much when I was a teenager that I would read through the whole thing, get to the last bit of the 5th book, and then just start again.
Right.
The Philosopher's Answer to the Universe is an excellent piece of sort of unionised. Hold on, we don't want this answer. We want well-defined areas of doubt and uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think they should make a new Hitchhiker's Guide movie about the invasion of cricket.
Yeah.
Right. And the very funniest thing I think actually was the verb formations, where you had it wasn't the biggest problem with time travel wasn't doing it, but actually constructing a sentence that included all the various.
And he was going to have been
whether you were going to do something but didn't do it by going backwards in time and undoing it or something, or you were going to do it and didn't do it, but you went back. And it was a fantastic chapter on that. It was just absolutely brilliant. Dr. Street Mentioner's Grammar Guide to Time Travel. It's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I love Douglas Adams was one of my favourite authors. The Hitchhiker's series and the Dirk Gently series was some of my greatest reading times. Rip Douglas Adams, definitely. Him and Terry Pratchett, and maybe Tom Holt, my favourite authors. Then we got Syed Ahmed for $1.99 says, are Americans allowed to call Spurs a numpty? Yes, everyone has permission to call Spurs a numpty. Macabre Malafika for number 5 Australian says, Professor Bell, Tony, to what extent do you guys see these internet debates as an exercise in rhetoric versus one in education? I think most Flerfs are pose. Tony?
Yeah, well, I was trying to get to this earlier. I don't think, you can try to explain something to a Flerf in these conversations, but they do seem to be willfully trying to avoid learning. So the idea is to sort of try and box them into a ridiculous position, and hopefully people in the chat are seeing this happen and can apply the same arguments when they encounter Flerfs. So what we're trying to do is sort of propagate as much knowledge as we can. And, from you, team, Blue Marble Science, Conspiracy Cats, I learn stuff all the time about how to do this, about how to sort of box in ignorance and make it look as ridiculous as it is. So in that sense, it's about educating the audience, but it's not about educating the Flerf.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's not forget, this is a learning experience for us as well on this side. Being able to provide better arguments, more concise arguments, and more direct arguments, and also what the research. I mean, I've had to do, for instance, in terms of refraction and other issues, and a bit of surveying, things that I've become interested in. We've learned a hell of a lot in trying to explain your position. So it's educational for us, as well as hopefully educational for people who are listening, and as well as putting down this sort of anti-science rhetoric, which obviously we want to destroy, nip it in the bud.
And I think that when I first came into this, I think November 2018 was when I uploaded my first video, which was I want to say a debate, but it really wasn't a debate, with Flat Out Hero, and I didn't understand the arguments, and I was just pissed off with him, and it was angry and horrible. And even though I understood the science, I just didn't know the Flat Earth arguments. Whereas now I know the Flat Earth arguments, and I can counter them, and I've had to learn to become better at debating. And I don't want to blow my own horn, but I think I'm quite good at debating Flat Earthers now, because I know their claims, I know how to refute them. And I think that's what it is. It's just about learning how to.
I think you've improved a lot, actually, Craig.
Thank you. I've worked hard at it. So.
Yeah, it shows.
And Phil Bell was just saying in the chat that he thinks that Flerfs are willfully ignorant.
Shield of stupidity.
That's exactly
shield
it.
Of stupidity.
Yeah.
The more stupid they are, the more they can. Your arguments can't work on them.
And it winds them up much that I've managed to monetize their stupidity. They hate that. I mean, my debate with Sleeping Warrior, he only agreed to come on if I didn't monetize it, no super chats and stuff. And his reasoning was that he refuses to support me making money off of him. He was saying he thinks there's too much money around in the whole thing. Yeah, I pointed out to him that he's happy to go on Nathan's show, who is literally all about the super chats. He doesn't shut up about it. And no one ever asks Nathan to turn off his super chats when Globers come in. And I think it's the same with Quantum Eraser, No one asks them to go and turn off their super chats. It was very hypocritical of him. And I only did it because it was time for me and him to have that debate that has been more than a year in the coming. But I won't be doing that again.
Tony, Phil Bell wants you to type in the chat so he can tag you.
Yep, I saw that.
Right.
I just wanted to quickly say that Phil Bell has also in the chat said that you expose Sleeping Warrior's idiocy and ignorance to a new level that he hadn't previously appreciated.
I'm glad I did.
He knew that Sleeping Warrior was a Poe, but he intends to sort of exploit some of the cracks that you showed in Sleeping Warrior's position. So I would consider that high praise if he said that about me. So I think you should be very proud of the way you handled yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. GBG Man for 50 secs says how to cook a medium egg if not alter time. Yeah, his argument, my example of the tea bags and stuff, you can't argue against it, but you fucking tried. PP Earth for $4.99. There it is. Says I'll give Riley credit where credit's due. He's somewhat adequate exchanger of oxygen for carbon dioxide. Yeah, I guess he does that all right. Got to do something, right?
Oh, yeah, but he doesn't earn it, does it?
No, he should apologise to trees.
He's stealing that oxygen from other more worthy life forms.
Yeah, like a slug. Mabasa Richie for £5 says that was painful, just caught up on the debate and glad I caught the end of the stream. Thank you very much and welcome. Earl of Sandwich for $5 says, check the Bible. A dome was placed above to separate things. A dome is part of a sphere. The spin of rotation essentially separates everything. The Earth's a globe. Yeah, the Bible doesn't say the Earth's flat. Tim Pryor for $5 says, Craig, going to make me come to Scotland to get my wrench back? No, I've given it back to you. I don't know why it keeps disappearing. For Shanty, my number one, for £2 says, today's debate more than proved why Riley won Dumbfuck of the Year. Yeah, it's a shame he can't win it twice, huh? Godless Scummer for £5 says, sorry, missed Leaky earlier. Was Riley crestfallen when he found out he couldn't win Dumbfuck of the Year 2 years running? Well, don't worry, there is going to be a Dumbfuck of the Decade. Carrie Oliver for $33.33, thank you very much, says, had to drink a Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster just to watch this. Yeah, even that knocks out even Zaphoid Bibelbrox, so I'd be careful. Godless Scummer for £5 says, hey, I'm FTFE, and I'm the Penguin to Team Skeptics Joker. Oofed. Chris Gilroy for £1.99 says, Tony, do you have a channel? If not, why not?
I do have a channel. It's got all of one video on it. There you go.
I think we'd enjoy maybe getting some more explanations of stuff from you.
Okay. Well, I did put together some presentations for some stuff, so I might put some more stuff out there.
It'd be awesome. I'd enjoy it.
A lot of the stuff that one of the things that I'm trying to actually one of the things that got me into this is actually climate change science. So climate science, climate physics, and I kind of thought that was being abused with misinformation and disingenuous skepticism. And then I became aware of this, and it just seems like we've got a major problem as far as scientific discourse is concerned. There are a lot of people out there who are willfully manipulating it.
Then we've got IMD Fox for €5 says, you know who was a great teacher of critical thinking? The late, great James Randi. Yeah, he destroyed a lot of pseudoscience claims. That was always fun. Brian Peck for €2
always
says,
an inspiration.
Yeah. Brian Peck for $2 says, we need your paper one day, Rumpus.
Yeah, I've got this bloody 250-page website that is almost... Trouble is, I keep on getting more and more material now. Now I've gotten to a bit of surveying. I'm now doing a bit more on the geometry of the Earth and the oblateness and some of the calculations you have to do for great circles and... I've got a bit more into the geometry of the Earth, and so unfortunately I've now got more things to do on it. Yeah, it's 250 pages. I really will get it done. I think I had COVID and flu or something for the last 2 or 3 months, and I will do it. And unfortunately, I'm getting a bit involved now in dealing with an astrodynamicist I'm trying to do some stuff on, and I'm trying to now get organised to do this real-world surveying of the Bedford levels of the curve of the Earth using calculating the drop, and I'm getting some team of about 5 or 6 people with me, and we're all going to go over there. And I found a straight bit of this drainage ditch, which is like a very wide canal that goes for 6 miles, and I should be able to measure a drop of about 7 meters over that distance. And I've got the auto level gear and stuff, and I'm going to hopefully do a live feed on this, so it'll be like a sort of super duper version of what Sparkane did. So yes, I'm trying to do some stuff, but I will make a big effort to do that.
That'd be awesome.
Thanks for mentioning it.
I just sorry to interrupt. Phil Bell just made such a great point that I really want to share it, which is to say that because all of us are learning as we're engaging with this subject, we're also better understanding how to teach. It goes hand in hand. If we're thinking about how stuff can be better communicated to us, we're also thinking about how we can better communicate it to other people. So hopefully everybody who's participating in this as an audience member or a panel member is constantly learning and developing science communication skills.
Yeah.
Don't you find that by trying to explain something to someone else, you actually gain a better understanding of it yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think
that's a great way of learning.
Telling someone else what
exactly
something is a great way for educating yourself. You suddenly realise, hold on, I can make that clear. Or yes, that isn't quite work. Yeah.
Yep.
And then you have to try a new way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Having the knowledge there in your head is not necessarily the same as understanding how to explain it well to somebody else. So yeah.
I've got a question in the chat. JH says, FTFE, could you please elaborate on why you always repeat that a pressure gradient is evidence against the dome? I think you're wrong. The effect of gravity still works inside a container. Absolutely, you're right. But the standard flat Earth argument is that gravity doesn't exist and a dome is the thing that keeps the atmosphere in. Now, assuming that gravity doesn't exist, then there is no reason why the gas pressure within the dome would not be equal at every point. The reason that there is a gradient is because of gravity. And if there is gravity, we don't need a dome.
Yeah, and that's right. The thing is,
yeah.
if there was a dome, it would be completely redundant because there's no pressure for it to hold in. By the time if you go up to whatever 60-odd miles or something, 100 miles, it'd be nothing. You'd have nothing to do.
No, exactly. Right, P. Peter for $4.99 says, Pissing Warrior wanted the super chats off because he didn't want the chat ripping his foolishness to pieces. He had a hard enough time with just you. Thank you very much. IMD Fox for €5 says, thanks God the Scummer for correcting me. He's still great though. I'm not really sure what that's about, but awesome. And then God the Scummer for £2 says, have this super chat just to add to Riley's tears. Thank you very much. That is everything for tonight, guys. It has been an amazing stream. I've had an absolute blast with the debate and this after show. Rumpus and Tony, thank you for coming on and hanging out with me in the after show. Always appreciated.
Thanks, Craig.
No worries.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Always welcome. Your expertise is amazing. Remember, guys, the support that you give me is the reason I can keep doing this. Like I said, it blows my mind. But I do know not everyone can support financially. And if you want to support me and annoy Sleeping Warrior, please share the debate that I had with him everywhere that you can share it. Possibly on any social media he happens to have, which would be great. I'm going to get out of here for tonight. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you for all the support. It's been amazing. I will have a new video out in the next day or so that is about Riley, that's not to do with this debate. I was writing it before this debate happened. Now let me find my outro. And remember, stupidity is not right. Fight the flat earth. Fight the flat. 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 Fight the flat.
Craig.